Alright, hello. Today we have a very special video. As you can see, it's a very long one, and it talks about a really big issue that is very visible now in the game, that the latest changes to damage determination has happened, and this is difficulty. And for anyone that doesn't know me or any dev watching this video by chance, my name is Moog, and you might know me from the Wisp videos, the Salta videos, and my influence on the market of the game for weapons such as the Salta, the Tenet Glaxion, the Kodapox, and then the Dark Sword most recently. So these weapons were all under the radar pretty well, and I brought them to light a bit by myself and some other YouTubers that brought them to light. But weapons such as the Kodapox and Dark Sword and the Stalta mainly, I think I can take full credit of those. And yeah, I generally know my shit. Like, I really play this game for a living now, and I basically know this game inside out, and I know really well that both the players and DE want the game to be more difficult, and they're trying to do this in ways that make sense. So today, I will present you a document that I've been working on for the past few days. It took me many hours to write this, which is why the video is so long. And we're gonna go through all of it together. There will be some timestamps talking about the contents inside this document, but without further ado, let's go and check it. So this document is called Difficulty. I will have it in the description, and there will probably be a Reddit post about this document, just in case anybody wants to see it and not listen to me explaining this video directly to them. But I think my explanations, or skipping to parts where I explain stuff, if you're like unironically reading this on your own, because it is a very long document. As you can see, we have more than 1800 lines of writing here, so definitely lots to go through. So let's begin. Now that damage attenuation is gone from a lot of units, we can see a lot of flaws in Warframe's difficulty. After Jade Shadow's armor limitation and health changes, the enemies have become much weaker in exchange for a more streamlined and easier to understand damage calculation versus enemies. So, in case you don't know what I'm talking about, and you're fairly new to the game, and you didn't get to experience Jade Shadows yourself, what Jade Shadows did, and it was one of the biggest changes in the game that resulted in the game becoming way easier, was that the different types of armor we had, like back in the day we had alloy armor, we had ferrite armor, we had a lot of types of armor that had different resistances to different elements. These simply became unified as armor from Grineer, armor for Kuva Grineer, and then shields from Corpus, shields from Janus Corpus, etc. So this very easily changed how damage works in the game, and it was way easier to understand how damage works in the game. And if we go to the navigation now, depending on what enemies appear, we get recommended a damage type that the enemies are weak to. So for example, we get corrosive on units that are Grineer, viral for units that are Arcane, and then electricity for units that are Corpus. So, you know, so far so good. The changes on Jade Shadows also did one more thing, and they made it so that the armor from Grineer units had a cap at 90% damage reduction. So I will bring up the wiki here, and I will go to the unit that we care about the most, which is the Grineer Lancer, the default Grineer Lancer. So if we put the scaling here, we will see this damage reduction thing keep going up and up as we go up in levels. You know, we're now at 150 to 100, still goes up. At some point around here, we see that the armor is now capped to 90% and 2700 armor, and it will never ever go up, even if we keep increasing the level to ridiculous amounts. Like, even if I put this to level cap, this doesn't get increased at all. And this becomes even worse if we go to a unit like the Heavy Gunner. The Heavy Gunner has a lot more damage reduction, and going to simply something like level 50 or level 60, we already capped that damage reduction, so his tankiness doesn't go that far up from levels from here onwards. So this is pretty bad. For the game and how difficult the game kind of needs to be to challenge the player into learning how to play the game, this is kind of bad. It's pretty bad overall. And To fix this, they tried to do artificial difficulties such as damage attenuation, Eximus enemies, and overguard, and a lot of other stuff to try and add difficulty back to the game. And ultimately, even though overguard kind of did correct things, it also made a huge problem when it comes to crowd control abilities. And damage attenuation as a mechanic proved to be something that the community didn't really like, and I was one of the advocates that I thought damage attenuation was really bad. So let's go. Let's continue. Stealth Path is currently a joke, and pretty much everyone can do it unless they don't want to. Stealth Path is just a difficulty modifier. What do I mean by this? So specifically, Stealth Path does the following: enemy level plus 100, enemy health plus 250, enemy shields plus 250, and 100% resource and mode drop chance. So we can see this right here. If we hover the Stealth Path in game, we see enemy level, enemy health, enemy shield, and the resource drop chance and mode drop chance modifiers. So clearly, the difference from Origin System Normal and from the Stealth Path is just a difficulty spike. Because you're adding more difficulty, the game rewards you with new challenges and new things to do in the game, such as the incursions that grant you Steel Essence, and Steel Essence is a resource that can be exchanged to Teshin in order to get more stuff that are really good to your weapons, such as primary weapon arcanes, secondary weapon arcanes, and or adapters rather, Kuva, relics, you know, all that good stuff. Overall, it's a really good thing. So, you know, emphasizing Stealth Path is not a game mode, it's a difficulty level. So a simple answer is to create more difficulties. So a lot of people have been saying this, but most people, you know, I'm talking about this, usually when this idea is brought up, Warframe players just suggest increasing the enemy level. This does not solve the problem. Why does it not solve the problem? So there is a ton of videos. I don't know if you guys know about a small tool that allows you to, I will not go into details, but there is a tool that allows you to spawn enemies in the simulacrum on whatever level you want by doing some adjustments to not a pre-existing account, but a fan-made account, let's say, of your mastery rank. You can basically get infinite mastery rank, which allows you to get infinite levels onto your simulacrum. And currently, enemies can easily die in one shot to some weapons, even at level 300,000. And this is without any Warframe buffs, by the way. This is just the weapons being able to do this. So, at level 300,000, even there, I don't even know if I can put something like this here. So, let's try it. I can. And as you can see, at level 300,000, a Lancer has 235 million efficient health. This is an easy one-shot for a lot of weapons, like easy one-shot. And even if we go to a tougher unit like a heavy gunner and we do the same thing, we see 700 million damage. Again, this is not a lot of health. You can easily one-shot this without any issues whatsoever. As you can see, his actual normal health is only 28 million. As the damage reduction is capped, this is simply not enough. So increasing the difficulty by increasing the enemy level simply does not work at all. So what is my solution? Health, shield, and damage modifiers. Health and shield modifiers already exist, and damage modifiers can be added. So as we saw before, if we hover Stealth Path, we have enemy level, enemy health, and enemy shield modifiers. So in theory, you create more Stealth Path difficulties where the enemy level remains the same, but the enemy health and enemy shields get increased by a lot. And how do you balance this out? You increase the resource drop chance and the mode drop chance booster that the enemy gives you, or that the mission provides. So we will get into more detail about how this will work, but for now let's see the difficulties. So increase the amount of Stealth Path difficulties, enemy level remains the same on every difficulty. Currently, enemy armor is capped at 90%, as I showcased, which is not enough for later difficulties. So, Stealth Path 1 is the current version of Stealth Path. So, when you get Stealth Path 1, you get this. And one thing I want to mention before I go into the next difficulties is that if you complete every Star Chart mission like I have on these difficulties, then going to the other difficulties, which, you know, it would just make this list bigger here, and you would go from like up here to down here, for example. Going to this difficulty would still have every mission unlocked, as they would share the same progression as Stealth Path 1. I think this makes sense in order to not be too grindy to grind every different Stealth Path, and especially considering that the amount of Stealth Paths added in total are 7. So Steel Path 2, enemy health plus 1000%, enemy shield plus 1000%, enemy damage plus 60%, and 200% resource and more drop chance booster. So overall, I think the values here, like enemy damage, health, and shield, are correct for every difficulty, and you will see why. The resource and more drop chance boosters might be a bit overkill depending on the difficulty because they get really, really high. So if, let's say, a dev would like this idea and they would want to adopt something like this, the resource and more drop chance booster not being this is fine. The whole thing that I want to present here is the idea of how these difficulties should work, and not to have a definitive number for everything. Just an idea, essentially. I have done my own balancing throughout this document to make it make sense, and we will see that. But for now, you know, these are just numbers. Numbers can be tuned to whatever you want. So Steel Path 2, already, this is an idea that should be accessible by default by the player. So if you have done everything in Steel Path 1, if you have your Arcanes for primary, secondary, Warframe, everything, and you have every mode maxed out, then Steel Path 2 should still be easily accessible by the player. You shouldn't have any issues dealing with Steel Path 2 here, and this should be just fine, especially considering that even enemies at level cap, they're not really that powerful. So this is like playing, let's say, at level 1000 or level 2000, something like that. So not really that big of a deal. Steel Path 3, enemy health 4000%, enemy shield 4000%, enemy damage 150%, resource and more drop chance 300%. So now, as you will see, the modifiers for health, shield, and enemy damage will start climbing the numbers exponentially, and I will get to why, but first let's finish the difficulties. So 10,000%, 10,000%, and 300% with a 400% resource. Then 50,000% and 50,000%, 800 damage and 500% resource, 125k, 125k, 1200 damage and 50% enemy armor as well. So this helps with the fact that, you know, as we saw, some units like the Lancer, if you have them on, let's say, level 130, we are not close to 90% damage reduction yet, so this helps these units get even tankier, but it also increases the enemy damage reduction limit from armor to 95%. I don't want enemies to have infinite armor, and I think enemies having infinite armor is not really that fun, but I think 95% instead of 90% is still really, really good. So, you know, Steel Path 6, it's already like extreme difficulty, so this is already like way beyond any level cap you would see ever, especially with the enemy damage. And then Steel Path 7, we have 250,000%, 250,000%, 2000% enemy damage, 50% enemy armor again, and enemy DR limit increased to 95% with an 800% resource and more drop chance booster. As I said, this resource and more drop chance boosters are just numbers, so if this is too high or if a dev thinks this is too high, then, you know, you can definitely change this. It's just a number, essentially. So let's go to the details. You may think that Steel Path 7 is overkill. Let's see. Lancers have 37,570 health at level 140 in non-Steel Path. This means that in Steel Path 1 they have 93,925 health, and at Steel Path 7 they have around 93,925,000 health and 1.3 billion efficient health. Now we're talking, you know, 1.3 billion efficient health. Considering this unit is a very common unit, this is ridiculously high. This is ludicrous high. And yes, I know, it sounds like a lot, and that's honestly a good thing. Not because this is such an unreachable difficulty, but because Steel Path can help you reach that damage and beat its difficulty. So obviously, having these new modifiers for Steel Path and having all these new Steel Path difficulties, and then just adding this in order to encourage the player to play on these difficulties does not make any sense. No RPG game that you have played will give you this type of difficulty on their game and then not encourage you to play this difficulty to get better gear. So if you do introduce difficulties like this, then you definitely need a better gear to accommodate for it. Also, the Greek accent came out a bit, I'm sorry about that. But, you know, it's fine. So here is how. From Steel Path 2 onwards, you can earn special arcane shards that can be used in order to upgrade your Warframe, weapon, and operator arcanes past rank 5. So this is, you see this already and you're like, wait, that's fucking crazy. And if you don't know what I mean by that, you're new and you haven't figured out what these arcanes are yet, then when you reach late game and the last things you get pretty much on this game are these arcanes. So they are now maxed out at rank 5 and they give you some really neat bonuses for your Warframe, such as parkour velocity, fire rate, damage, critical chance, you know, you name it. Like, you can get extra maximum health, shield regeneration, whatever you want. They have a lot of applications and they're really nice to have. Basically mandatory if you're going to run Steel Path or level cap at the highest level. These should be mandatory. So, how to gain them? So playing from Steel Path 2 onwards, so Steel Path 1 cannot get you these shards, only from Steel Path 2 and up. You gain 2 of them on Apex bosses skills, 2 of them when you do the Eidolon Hydralist, which makes Eidolons kinda good now. The Profit Taker and Exploiter orbs drop 1 on kill, and I know you may say, well, Profit Taker is way easier than the Eidolon, but you have to understand that this is Profit Taker on the Steel Path 2 and upwards difficulty. This is a very difficult thing to do, and so is this, so I don't think it's too bad. Zealoid Prelate drops 1 on kill, then the Duviri Experience, the Lone Story, and Ileweaver all drop 1 shard when killing the final boss of their respective bounties, the 2 Fragmented for Ileweaver and Oro Worms for the other 2 game modes. The circuit rewards change after Steel Path 2 and now you can get rewarded 2 arcane shards, 1 at rank 5 and 1 at rank 10. And if you're wondering how this works, basically, so if we go to the circuit right now, we will see that the circuit has the normal path right here where you choose a Warframe to gather, and then you have the Steel Path that you gain, you know, whatever you want. Then you have, you know, the other difficulties here where it can be Steel Path 2 upwards, and then you click that and then you have a new path here that rewards you rank 5 and rank 10 with these arcane shards. But you can only pick one difficulty for these paths. So the moment you lock in on one difficulty, let's say Steel Path 3, you cannot play any other difficulty from the extra Steel Path difficulties. So playing Steel Path 3 and Steel Path 7 on the same week is not something that you can actually do. Let's continue. Every 30 minutes, a mega encounter occurs in the mission that each drops 1 arcane shard. Here is a list of them. So we have a name for each encounter and how they behave and how you get them. So obviously 30 minutes every mission, you know, this can be 20 minutes. I think 20 minutes is a bit too rewarding, considering that usually the average amount of time for all of these would be around that time, 30 minutes. And then the only reason why I can think 20 minutes is fine is because 20 minutes is usually the amount of time on a survival mission to get to the C rotation. However, I think 30 minutes is way more normal in terms of a grind. So, Acolyte Onslaught. All Acolytes invade at the same time. Pretty straightforward. You get all Acolytes invading you at the same time, killing them drops an arcane shard. Eximus Reinforcement. 2 Eximus enemies of each kind invade at the same time with 20% more speed. So 20% more speed, you can think of it as a Nova speed boost, so they get 20% more movement speed and 20% more fire rate or attack speed, and then you get 1 extra Eximus unit of a kind per player in the squad. So, you know, you get, in a max squad, you will get 5 Eximus enemies of each kind invading you at the same time. Then we have Parvus Invasion. Survive Errant Spectres for 30 seconds. If you guys don't know what Errant Spectres are, when you go to the Granum Void and you wanna, you know, kill those guys with the Zoris and then just kill enough and then you're out, that's generally what Errant Spectres are. So when you give these guys the amount of difficulty that you want and the extra damage, and that you make them immortal, then these can become really difficult to survive against. Then we have Sentient Dominations with 2 Aerolists, 2 Symbolists, 2 Ortholists, 2 Conculists, and 2 Battleists invading you all at the same time. And then plus 1 Sentient enemy type per player, so 5 Aerolists and 5 of everything if you're in a full-mon squad. Then we have Invasive Tech Roar where 10 random Babao Eximus enemies invade at the same time, +3 per player. And all of these that are for a Talisa specific only, you will have a guaranteed drop of these at 30 minutes. So every mission you spend 30 minutes on, the first time you get one of these mega encounters, you will have the invasive tech roar for 1999, and then from there onwards, it can be randomly put in the mission again, or you can get something completely different. So, you know, just to stick with the theme of the tile set, in my opinion, that is really, really nice. Then we have Priority Target, which is Sanctum only, and then 10 random Necromech Eximus invade at the same time, +3 per player. Janus Corrupted War, a corrupted version of Janus War appears, phase 2 only, and then mission level. He has 2 health bars and the player needs to execute a Parazon finisher on him to damage his second health bar. So, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Sacred Jackal enemy, but the idea is basically inspired from that specific enemy. So, you know, when you get through his first health bar, instead of having a transitional phase that you have to go through with a cinematic and all that, then you simply do a Parazon finisher and you directly go into stage 2 by him becoming vulnerable again after a few seconds, and then, you know, his second health bar appears. But it's basically the same thing, as he is like constantly attacking you and throwing shit at you all the time, just like he does in the phase 2 of the actual boss fight. The Great Manic Experiment is Uranus only, 5 Manic Bombards and 5 Drekar Manics invade at the same time. So these are 10 in total, but the Manic Bombard units are already probably the tankiest or the second tankiest unit in the entire game. Therefore, you know, +2 of each unit per player. This is 10 +4 instead of 10 +3 on these, so it's pretty much the same, if not a bit more difficult. Then we have Angel's Cry, which is Zariman only, 3 Void Angels invade at the same time. These are similar to the EDA style angels. So if you don't know what this means, usually angels on the Zariman you have to kill by going inside their bubble with Operator and then killing them from there. However, if you get a Void Angel on EDA, you just have to kill them on their outside phase and then the player is revived. So you got 3 of these type of Void Angels and then +1 per player. Up next we have God's Blood, which is Kuva Fortress only. A Kuva Spectre spawns per player and copies their Warframe loadout. They can only be damaged by a certain damage type that is indicated, and it can be swapped by shooting them with your AMP Profit Taker mechanic. So why do I write Profit Taker mechanic here? Because there is a mechanic like this exactly in the Profit Taker boss fight. So if you have, let's say, almost all damage types but you're missing one, and the Profit Taker RNGs to that damage type, then you can shoot them with your AMP for a bit, and then the damage type will change from that. So you can use that to your advantage on that fight, and you can use that to your advantage in this as well. The player has 1 minute to kill their Spectre in order to gain the Arcane shard. Failing to kill it puts a random permanent debuff onto the player for the rest of the mission, guaranteed at 30 minutes and random after. So this is definitely a more weird, you know, debuff, or more weird permanent encounter that you can have every 30 minutes. So the idea here that you could maybe make this encounter more rewarding, or maybe, you know, you remove this part, but I like this part. It plays more into the Kuva Fortress archetype for sure. And overall, this is definitely the most interesting one out of all of them, in my opinion. EDA and Temporal Archimedia also have their respective difficulties 1 to 7 with the same modifiers. As a reward from difficulty 2 and upwards, rewards from the pool number 20 and 34 are swapped to 1x Arcane Shard. So if we go to the actual game again, and we go to EDA, for example, we can see this in action. Before I go there, then we can read the rest. Both EDA and ETA can be played twice per week, once on the normal current difficulty and once on the difficulty from difficulty 2 and upwards. Example given, you can play EDA difficulty 1 and EDA difficulty 6, but you can't play EDA difficulty 5 and EDA difficulty 6 on the same week. I think this makes sense. This is also what I said about the circuit difficulties, so now that we're here I can also demonstrate this. So if we go here, we see this is reward pool number 20 and this is reward pool number 34. As you can see, 37 is the maximum, so these two would be the accessible ones. As you can see, for reward number 20, you need basically 3 of the mission encounters to get it. And then for 33, you need almost all of them but 1, and then you can get it as well. So that is about it for those. And then we have the latest ones that happened in the latest dev stream. So the Descendia and the Perita Rebellion. So I'm really happy about this dev stream and the game modes that we got introduced. And the fact that they can work perfectly with this system shows that this system can be robust and future-proof for the actual game if the decides to add more game modes that play into this archetype. So the Descendia and the Perita Rebellion from the latest dev stream also have their own modifiers and will be able to drop your Arcane shards. With the information I have from the dev stream 190 alone, I can add an Arcane shard, not an Arcane shard, that's a typo, on floor 11 and on floor 20 for Descendia. No info on the Perita Rebellion yet, because obviously we didn't get shown what this is. But for Descendia itself, we saw the rewards, how it is every 2 floors for now, and then you know, you have floor 7, 14, and 21, which aren't even considered floors but checkpoints. So, you know, you go from floor 2, 4, 6, and then you go to floor 9 because 7 is not a floor, and then 11, 13, and then you go back up to floor 16, 18, and 20, and then the mission is over. So floor 11 and floor 20. Now, each Arcane shard has its own tier depending on the Still Path difficulty the player chooses. So from Still Path 2 you get a rough Arcane shard, which is a 100% chance to increase an Arcane from rank 5 to rank 6, and a 25% chance to increase an Arcane from rank 6 to rank 7. So each difficulty increases the actual tier, or you know, the quality of your Arcane shard, let's say. So you get rough, then flawed, then tumbled, then flawless, then faceted, and then perfect on the end. So the perfect Arcane shard, as with all of them, increases 100% chance to increase an Arcane from rank 10 to 11, 25% chance to increase an Arcane from rank 11 to rank 12. And then for the perfect Arcane shard, upgrading from rank 11 to rank 12 has a pity system that allows you to get a guaranteed upgrade after 4 tries. AKA the chance increases by 25% for every fail on the same rank 11 Arcane. So we already have a system like this for the Arcane shards coming from Arcane hunts. Normally it's 20% chance, but as you can see here, the first time that I did this on 20% chance, I didn't get the red shard, so now if I do it again, it will have a 40% chance to drop me a Talforge shard. So this is pretty important to have it here, so that it doesn't feel too impossible, too grindy, or even too unfair to do this, because after 4 tries, you're guaranteed it. Rank 12 is the new highest rank of Arcanes. Arcane shards and Arcanes beyond rank 5 are not tradable. Arcanes can also not be broken down again after they have been upgraded past rank 5. So for example, let's say, so what this does first of all is you can't buy your way into becoming extremely strong and then decimated every fucking Still Path difficulty. I don't want that to happen. I think that would be very lame, and I think that would completely beat the purpose of whatever update we're trying to do. Because, you know, similarly to how you cannot trade Arcane shards, you shouldn't be able to train Arcane shards either. So I think that makes sense. So right now, if we go to rank 5 Arcane, let's go to acceleration for example, and I try to break it down, you know, this will return me 21 unranked Arcane accelerations. If this Arcane is rank 6 or upwards, then this button here gets removed completely. You cannot use this anymore. So, you know, if you want to get another rank 5 Arcane acceleration, you will need to get a different set of 21 Arcane accelerations. Considering Arcanes are very accessible nowadays through events that he does very frequently, this isn't too big of an issue anymore. So most players will be fine by this. And overall, I think them not being tradable, you not being able to buy your way into becoming this strong, is all about that. Because at the end of the day, these are difficulty modifiers. If you don't want to play on these difficulty modifiers, you can choose to just simply not do so. Nobody's forcing you to play in these difficulty modifiers but yourself. So more things about these difficulty modifiers, because you may say, well, if I have a perfect arcane sword and I have all these overpowered arcanes, then why wouldn't I bring all these overpowered arcanes to a base steel path mission? Well, first of all, the base steel path mission with these arcanes would be completely trivial, and you would basically kill everything by walking. So it would, first of all, be extremely boring. It wouldn't make sense to play it. Second of all, as we discussed previously, playing into higher difficulties rewards you with higher resource and more drop chances, which means better loot. And then the difficulty of quests in-game is adjusted depending on the user's arcane rank whenever their gear is used. This means that having a more upgraded arcane changes the difficulty a quest is played on, and the respective modifier is applied. Here is a list. So rank 6 Arcane means you play on the Steel Path on a quest guaranteed. Rank 7 Arcane is Steel Path 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 for a rank 12 Arcane. So as you can see, this can also add difficulty and even replayability to some quests you have already played if you want to experience them on a harder difficulty, to experience potentially boss fights on a way larger difficulty that can make them more interesting. So I think this is really cool to have, and I think this helps a lot with replayability of a lot of quests, since a lot of quests are replayable and you can go back and re-experience them, and this will help you a lot by adjusting your gear to be not too overpowered for the quest. So this is really good. So the main portion of the difficulty explanation of this document is now over, which is why I say feel free to not read the next part if not interested. Arcane 6, well, I mean, I'm saying this because the rest is just balance changes depending on the arcanes, and suggestions about the game balancing in order to make these difficulties feasible so players can feel rewarded by playing them. As you can see, there is a lot here because I included every single arcane in the entire game. Every single one. So arcanes rank 6 and above give an extra effect to the user when procced. Least of all arcanes and their buffs at rank 6 and rank 12. So right here, I can thankfully have all of the arcanes over here, so I can show you what they do currently at rank 5. And then we can look. The Akimbo Slipshot currently, when sliding or aim gliding, gains 65% ammo efficiency for dual pistols. So Akimbo Slipshot now, when sliding or aim gliding, rank 12, 100% ammo efficiency and 250% critical damage, well, for dual pistols. I mean, I can write it, but you know, it is the same, basically. So yeah, pretty cool. Overall, as you can see, this is a lot of crit damage and the 100% ammo efficiency. This plays really well into having a similar effect to Primary Crux, but for critical damage. And for dual pistols, this could be absolutely goated if you do something like an aim gliding build, or if you're using Zephyr, something like that. In general, you will see from this document that aim gliding is a legitimate playstyle that you can actually make use of now. And yeah, if you're gonna go ahead and do that, then you can do that. Generally, through all of these arcanes, you will see that a lot of new playstyles open up, including health tanking, including meleeing, including swapping between weapons, playing with arch gun, you know, whatever you may want, you can actually do that now. So this is a really big thing. Arcane Acceleration on critical hit, 30% chance for 300% fire rate and 75% headshot damage. Currently, it only gives you fire rate, so if I go to Arcane Acceleration, we get on critical hit 90% fire rates, excluding shotguns. This is the same thing, but 300% fire rate and 70% damage at max rank for 9 seconds. Arcane Aegis on shield damage, 3% chance for 70% shield recharge and 0.2% increased damage per current shield value for 12 seconds. So Arcane Aegis, if we actually go into the Arcane itself, we will see it's on shield damage, 3% chance for 30% shield recharge for 12 seconds. So the really big part about Arcane Aegis that makes it super strong is the fact that when you proc it, you can't actually take health damage as your shield is shield gating and then constantly regenning, and the shield gating part will keep you alive forever. So this is still a thing, but now because the shield recharge is so much and you get more damage per current shield value, let's say that over shields first of all don't count, but damage works similarly to Roar or Bane modes, and if you have 1500 shield, this would be equal to a 300% roar buff, which is really massive if you do proc it actually. So you can imagine this is overpowered on a lot of Warframes that have ridiculously high shield values, Harrow, Hildren, Revenant, even if you want to go that way. You can definitely do some crazy things with this, and it is really nice to have. So this is a really cool buff for Arcane Aegis, and you may say, oh, just make shield tanking even stronger. I don't see the issue. Well, everything is stronger, so you have to take shield tanking and make that stronger as well. So definitely trust me on that one. Arcane Agility. On damage, 60% chance for parkour velocity is currently, now it's, instead of 60, it's 130% chance for parkour velocity and 500% weapon damage while airborne for 18 seconds. So you can imagine this on some Warframes that can use the damage while airborne permanently, one of those being Jade, Titania, or any Warframe that likes being in the air for a very long time. They can easily use this Arcane. It's pretty niche, but it makes it super valuable and really nice to use. Up next we have Arcane Arachne. On Wallach, gain 150% damage to primary and secondary weapons is the current, so now it's 325% damage to primary and secondary weapons and 75% damage reduction for 30 seconds. So obviously, so far you understand that all of these arcanes are extremely broken, but you have to understand, getting to rank 12 on these arcanes is ridiculously hard because you need to be already on Steel Path number 7, and you need to play enough to get at least 2 of the Arcane Shards on Steel Path 7, with a maximum of 5 of the Arcane Shards on Steel Path 7 to make the upgrade to rank 12. So these are not easy Arcanes to get, and they are there to help you make Steel Path 7 an easier and not as grindy thing to play, essentially. Then we have Arcane Avenger. On damage, have 21% chance for a flat critical chance increase of 45% is currently. Now 21% chance for 100% critical chance at rank 12 and 150% critical damage for 12 seconds at rank 12. So critical chance is additive, critical damage is modded. You know what I mean by critical damage is modded. If you have Vital Sense, that gives you, I think Vital Sense gives you 200%, right? Might be wrong. Of course. 120, sorry. So 120 and then 150, that's 270% critical damage. So really cool. Then Arcane Awakening. On reload, get 60% chance for 325% damage to pistols and 150% status damage for 24 seconds. There is another Arcane on this for primary weapons, which is called Arcane Rise, and you will see it will do the exact same thing. Then we have Arcane Barrier or shield damage, 12% chance to instantly restore all shields. This is already what it does, but at only a, I think, 6% chance or something. This should actually be 13. This is my fault, but yeah. 13% chance to instantly restore all shields and gain 90% damage reduction for 12 seconds on a 12-second cooldown. So, you know, a pretty big deal in my opinion. 90% damage reduction for free is not something to be completely just, you know, you can't ignore 90% damage reduction. It's a really big deal, and especially when enemies will deal that much amount of damage, having this as a shield tank, this can help a lot, definitely. So then we have Arcane Battery. Right now this just gives maximum energy depending on armor, so we're increasing that our maximum energy per armor point up to 1500 enemy energy at max, and 6% ability duration and strength per 100 energy points. So 6% ability duration and strength. If we have the 1500 energy, let's say our Warframe at max will have 2300 energy. So if we go for a calculator and we do, so 2300, you know, that's 23 times 6. That is 138% ability duration and ability strength. So, you know, that's pretty cool, but that's like the hardest or the most insane example of this Arcane working. You still pick it mostly for maximum energy, but you still get the extra utility from ability duration and ability strength. So then we have Arcane Bellicose, which gives you ability strength and depending on the maximum health you have, I added an extra ability efficiency, and you can get ability efficiency up to 144% and ability strength. So this is completely dumb as 144% ability efficiency, but there is a lot of builds that are viable, and most of the Warframes you use Arcane Bellico's own will be on a build that has 45% efficiency. So if I go to this Wisp build right here, for example, you know, you go Arcane Bellicose on this Wisp build, you need 45% efficiency, 100%. And with 45% efficiency and having the Arcane backup, you would go all the way up to 175% efficiency, and you wouldn't have issues with that anymore at all, which is really, really nice if you can max out your Arcane Bellicose. Then Arcane Blade Charger. On primary weapon kill, 30% chance for 650% melee damage and 250% melee critical chance for 12 seconds. So Arcane Blade Charger and Arcane Primary Charger will be the same thing as before, with a bit of an extra buff, essentially, on how they work. So it can help a lot to have these now and play around them. So if you want to play with a blade and then a primary weapon, now you can. Then Arcane Blessing, on health pickup, plus 52 max health and plus 200 base armor, stacks up to 50 times. If you're wondering about the max values of this, we have 52 times 50, which is 2600 health, and then 200 times 50, that is 10,000 armor. So 2600 health and 10,000 armor on a Warframe, if you want to go endless, is something insane. 10,000 armor, especially when you can increase it by a lot. And I know it says base armor, but you know, it's just armor. Base armor wouldn't make sense because you would just put Warcry onto this and it's kind of just over after that. Warcry would just multiply it to ridiculous amounts, but no, it's just armor. So you get an extra 10,000 armor for free. This is the ultimate health tanking Arcane, and combining this Arcane with some other Arcanes on the list can make you into a really, really strong health tanking Warframe. So after this, we'll have Arcane Bodyguard. On 6 melee kills within 30 seconds, heal Companion for 2150 health, and increase the damage of beasts by 400% for 15 seconds. So if you're someone who likes mecha set, you know, this Arcane is really, really nice for you. You can use this with something like mecha set or something like your damage logo with, you know, I don't know, you can be using Pharaoh Predacite, Magic Predacite, Stunika Kubro, depending on what you're using. This could be really, really cool to have. Then Arcane Kamisado, attacks from summoned minions increase ability strength by 12% up to 120%, and summons gain 90% movement speed and 140% damage. So summons here gaining this movement speed and the ability strength, these are all in the game. The extra damage onto your summons is what's changed here and what the extra effect is. And for Warframes like Caliban's or Warframes that use summons and they help a lot, this can be absolutely incredible. Arcane Consequence, on headshot gain 130% parkour velocity and 300% headshot damage while airborne. So this can be really, really cool if you're playing something like an aim glide build again. You know, just aim glide shenanigans, they're all really, really strong with this one. And 100% parkour velocity, this is a lot of parkour velocity, so it just helps you repro Consequence and keep the parkour velocity going. And then Arcane Crepuscular, this is something that a lot of people would probably notice this because it's already so overpowered. So obviously the rank 12 stats are all buffed, so you have 70% ability strength and 7 times final critical damage while invisible. And then I added 70% chance to ignore a status effect while invisible. So in general, ignoring status effects or status effects when you're invisible are the things that can ruin your invisibility frames quite a lot. If you're looking at Sight, if you're looking at Ivara, and if you're looking at most of invisible frames, Loki, Ash, they really, really hate being afflicted by a status effect. So this is a huge, huge buff to this, even though it's just a quality of life. Then we have Arcane Deflection. Rank 12, you still have the 100% chance to ignore a status effect. So basically, because there is a lot of Arcanes right now in the game, such as Arcane Deflection, that allows you to completely ignore a status effect forever. I feel like you need to overbuff these to make them viable, and the way I did it is that instead of just ignoring the status effect, you ignore the damage type of rank 12 completely. So you get 100% reduction to that damage type, and you also gain extra damage if you do that damage type. So for deflection, you have 100% reduction to slash damage, and then slash damage from you deals extra damage from the status. So, you know, yes, this completely removes slash damage, but it still makes it a fairly niche choice. 2 extra passives since rank 5 already puts you at 102% chance. So this is gonna be the same thing for every arcane that has this. So you can think about the magnetic arcane, the fire arcane, the cold arcane, arcane warmth, ice, whatever you wanna call them. It will be like this for every single one of those arcanes, but we will get to them. You can see them in detail. Arcane double back, it already gives the arcane resistance. The thing that I increased is the amount of seconds that you get per dodge, and then I added an extra weapon damage so that you can have good damage resistance and good weapon damage by stacking it up to 3 times. So this can be really cool. Arcane energize. On energy pickup, 325 energy and 150% ability strength to self and allies for 15 seconds. Arcane Energize is an arcane that has kind of fallen off as the time has progressed because energy generation hasn't been a real issue, and giving it a utility such as ability strength to yourself and allies for 15 seconds, this can help a lot with a lot of spammy builds and builds that you really want to just spam your abilities as much as possible. This helps a lot. Arcane Eruption on energy pickup, 100% chance to knock down enemies within 65 meters and 90% weapon damage per energy orb, stacking up to 5 times. Currently, this doesn't have an LOS check as far as I know, but I think adding an LOS check to this would definitely be needed. But the big part is obviously the 90% weapon damage per energy orb, stacking up to 5 times. So this would give you in total 450% weapon damage if you got 5 energy orbs. Or universal orbs. You can use it with universal orbs as well, which is really nice. Then we have Arcane Escapist. On Mercy Kill, gain a stack of Escapist up to 9 times on taking fatal damage, consume 3 stacks to avoid death and become invulnerable. This is what the Arcane does currently. But then gain 350% weapon critical chance as well for the duration that you are invulnerable. So this is, you can think this as the Daga third ability augment kinda. But instead of gaining critical damage, you gain critical chance as well, and you have the 26 seconds of not taking damage. So Escapist is a really cool arcane, and I think a lot of people would love to have something like this in the game. And many of these arcanes can offer some really cool combinations that, you know, having them in the game can easily expand your playstyle and make you think outside the box and do crazy stuff with them. Arcane Fury on critical hit, 60% chance for 390% melee damage and 75% melee attack speed for 18 seconds. This is not something too crazy, it's just a normal buff for Arcane Fury to make it useful for like every type of scenario that you want to use melee weapons. So it would be kind of the de facto arcane. Oh, I want to use a melee weapon, I need to use Arcane Fury for the melee weapon to be more useful. Then we have Arcane Grace, which is the other health tanking arcane. On health damage, rank 12 gives you 9% chance for 13 health regeneration per second and 0.2% damage per current health value. Damage is similar to Roar or Bane, same as Arcane Aegis. So this is the big one. So, you know, all of this time we have Warframes such as Inaros, such as Nidus, such as Wisp, such as, you know, Oberon, whatever, Kullervo. Warframes that can reach ridiculous health values and they don't really do anything with them. You can reach ridiculous health values only for that health value to just completely die out. But this arcane paired with Arcane Blessing can really help you survive. And not only survive, but gain a huge damage boost if you play some of these Warframes. You can imagine on Inaros, someone who would reach close to 10,000 health right here, having a damage of almost 2,000%, I would say, is pretty good. If you're at full health, that is. I don't know if you would be at full health with Inaros all the time, but having this crazy damage value and being the tank that you are, that would make Inaros absolutely beautiful to play at that point. And your Kavats would do a lot of damage, your weapons would do a lot of damage, and you would feel way better to play at those higher and more difficult missions than just what we have currently, where you kind of just survive until you can't survive more and then you kind of do nothing after that. Then we have Arcane Guardian, where on damage you have 15% chance to gain 3000 armor and 1.1% damage reduction per percent missing health, maxed out, and 99% damage reduction at 10% health. Well, I didn't add the timer, so let me look at in-game so I can add the timer real quick. So it is for 20 seconds. So we add that as well. As you can see, this is all handwritten, by the way, completely from start to finish, which is why there are so many mistakes that I'm trying to fix. But obviously, as we go through it, those mistakes will be fixed and the final product will have pretty much none. Ideally, there might be some typos, but ideally I would want 0 mistakes on this. So notes on rank 12 being 10% health gives you 99% damage reduction and 50% damage reduction at 55% health, pure defensive tank arcane. So if you want a health tank and be sure that your health tanking will be good enough, you can use this arcane to get the extra armor and the extra damage reduction per percent missing health to absolutely make sure that you cannot really die anymore. So next we have arcane healing. And this is another one of these arcanes that you're resistant to a specific status effect. So this one is for radiation. So you gain 100% damage reduction to radiation damage, and enemies affected by radiation also take 100% more damage. So something like Oberon or Nyx would obviously, you know, benefit insanely well from this. Corvex, you know, anything that deals radiation damage and radiation status, as a Warframe would get a huge benefit from this arcane, and they would most likely want to use it. Then we have Arcane Hotshot. When using abilities that inflict hit damage, gain weapon critical chance, this is already in the game, and 9% ability damage at maximum of 60 stacks. So right now, if you had a maximum of 60 stacks, you would get, I think, 350% weapon critical chance, or 300, I think it's 350. But then this buff is now 650% bonus instead of 350. And also, you get a whopping 450% more ability damage. So, Warframes that have a lot of hit damage onto their abilities would become viable to keep using that hit damage and do damage with their abilities on those higher levels. So if you're looking at Ember, Temple, Gauss, and all of the other Warframes that do have hit damage onto their abilities, maybe even Kome. It's RNG there, but you know, you could definitely see this working on a lot of Warframes. Protea, you know, dealing insane damage with those abilities and gaining a huge benefit from this. So then we have Arcane Ice, which plays directly into this, so we get 100% chance to resist the heat status and 100% damage reduction to heat damage and 100% heat status damage. So if you have something that can deal heat status effect from your abilities and you combine these two together, you get an absolutely insane DPS frame from your abilities directly being the killing. So something like this would almost never happen to level cap unless your abilities are so robust that can kill everything on its own. But even on the case of Protea, who has one of the strongest hit builds for her abilities, you would either need to go for a hit inherit setup to deal with level cap, or you would need to deal with the level cap using your 4th ability, because your 4th ability does a lot more damage at those levels since it scales with enemy health. But in general, you know, Arcane Ice and Arcane Hotshot would make so that your abilities using hit procs would now become way more strong and way more valuable onto these levels, especially considering enemy health is now ridiculously high. Now, Arcane Ice Storm on enemy frozen, gain ability strength and ability duration. This is what already happens. And then we added a 2% damage reduction for 15 seconds. So as you can see, what increases by this every level is the stacks. So now we stack up to 42 times. And at maximum stacks, we can do 2 times 42 to get the maximum. So we get 84% ability strength, ability duration, and 84% damage reduction for 15 seconds on enemy frozen, which stacks up to 42 times. Really good. Overall, this arcane for someone that can abuse it very easily, such as Frost or Gauss, this is an absolute godsend for these Warframes. Then we have Arcane Impetus on unique status effects from abilities, gain 30% ability strength, 6.5% ability efficiency, and reduce enemy armor within 15 meters by 9%. So basically, this has, again, stacks in theory, because, you know, it's on unique status effects. To imagine, there is 13 unique status effects, so whatever you get here, you do times 13, and then you get the full picture. And yes, this makes it a full armor strip at rank 12. I think even at rank 11, if you did you would do 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9%, obviously, for each rank. And I think even on rank 11 with the 8%, you would still be able to get a full armor strip from this. So this is really cool as an arcane to have, but obviously rank 12 getting the extra stats here, this is really nice. And especially on some warframes that cannot really proc all of the status effects at the same time, yeah, you can easily make more use of this on rank 12 instead of rank 11. Then we have Arcane Intention, which is way more situational. Normally it gives you max health per active channeled ability, but I also gave rather ability strength, because ability strength on channeled abilities can help a lot. So you use the channel ability, you close it, you open it again, you gain the ability strength, and boom, you get crazy damage on that channel ability. Then we have Arcane Momentum. On critical hit, gain 60% chance for 325% reload speed and critical damage to sniper rifles. Overall, this is reload speed on its own. I think critical damage makes sense because critical hits is what you're getting buffed from, so critical damage is the no-brainer to put here for your sniper rifle. Then we have Arcane Nullifier, which once again is the status effect neglection arcane, so resisting magnetic status, 100% damage reduction to magnetic damage, and 100% damage on enemies affected by magnetic status. This is really cool, and it can come in play with some other arcanes that are in the game now. In theory, if this was in the game, this would help a lot with some arcanes, and it will help a lot of warframes that can deal magnetic damage through their abilities, such as mag. Then we have Arcane Phantasm. On block, you get a great steroid of speed and melee attack speed, so this can be combined with other stuff on the melee category and give you some pretty cool stuff, but on block is a very interesting combo. You do block a lot, but overall it's not something that you will do all the time when you're melee. Then we have Arcane Pistolier. On pistol headshot kill, 60% chance for 102% ammo efficiency and 150% fire rate, and instead, so you have ammo efficiency on its own right now on Pistolier. You gain extra fire rates when you put this to rank 12, and headshots have 35% chance of inflicting a blast status effect for 12 seconds. So you have a 35% of getting a blast status from your weapon, so that means you wouldn't have to mod this weapon for blast if you're hitting a headshot, and Pistolier becomes, you know, a really cool arcane to use for both primary and secondary weapons, and you don't really use it just for making your AoE weapons absolutely disgusting. You can use it for other stuff now. Then we have Arcane Power Ramp, which is on ability cast. Next ability cast gains plus 30% ability strength. Added ability range to it because it's a very niche arcane, and it's a very team heavy arcane. You usually use this in a team environment to upkeep your ability strength in order to not have issues with it, because it resets when the same ability is recast consecutively. So, you know, you have a warframe like Banshee, let's say, you make it so that you need to cast your 2 and then another ability that could possibly be your subsume, then you keep casting those back and forth and you gain ability strength and ability range, which results in better and way stronger sonars. So really cool. Then we have Arcane Precision. On headshot, gain 650% damage and 200% reload speed for 18 seconds. Pretty straightforward. This is similar to the arcane that we had for on headshots on the primaries. And then we have Arcane Primary Charger, which is similar to the Blade Charger arcane, 650% primary weapon damage and critical chance for 12 seconds when you get a melee kill with a 30% chance. Then Arcane Pulse on health pickup, 60% chance to restore 1200 health and increase ability duration by 150% to allies within 25 meters for 13 seconds, 15-second cooldown. So this is similar to Arcane Energize, although aside from Arcane Energize being 15 seconds here, this is 13, because ability duration, especially at those higher levels, would be way more valuable than ability strength, since CC would become way more prevalent on these higher difficulty levels. Just as, you know, enemies get way more damage, you really want your CC to be effective so that you can deal with those enemies. Then we have Arcane Rage. On headshot, 15% chance for 360% damage and 200% reload speed to primary weapons for 24 seconds. So, you know, this are similar but for primaries and secondaries. Then we have Arcane Reaper. On melee kill, plus 48 health regen per second and 1430 armor, and plus 200% melee damage for 10 seconds. So Arcane Reaper is an arcane that you usually use to do a melee only or an E-spam build, and currently it does its work pretty well at keeping you alive. It gives you a ton of tankiness, but it only gives you tankiness. So if you were doing melee stuff only, you would want your Arcane Reaper to possibly give you more. And I think I would much rather have this at 250%, knowing that the other stats are not like the way they are. So I think 250% melee damage would be way more fair. So yeah. Now, Arcane Resistance, this is for the Toxin status effect, so yes, Toxin damage is gone if you so please. If you so please, and if you don't care, you don't want to deal with Noxes anymore, enemy Toxin weapon is your worst enemy on Disruption, you can straight up remove it if you want by using Arcane Resistance and gain extra Toxin status damage. So if you use this on Gauss, Gauss is indeed unkillable. He cannot die. So, pretty good. Arcane Rise on reload gains 60% chance for 330% damage and 150% status damage to primary weapons for 24 seconds. So this is similar to the Arcane Awakening we saw for secondary weapons, but for primaries. Then we have Arcane Steadfast on ability cast, 40% chance that the next 3 abilities will not cost energy and deal 180% more damage. So normally it's a chance that the next 3 abilities will not cost energy, but I also wanted to make them deal more damage because Steadfast is usually used on weapons or Warframes rather that they want to spam their abilities as much as possible, and it's usually alone or in combination with Arcane Energize or in combination with Arcane Battery. So definitely a big buff for this and something that it's needed in order to compensate for the amount of enemy health that the enemies will have. Then we have Arcane Strike. On hits, rank 12 is 15% chance for 130% attack speed and 180% critical damage to melee weapons for 18 seconds. So Arcane Strike, a really strong arcane, and paired with Arcane Fury, this would give you 205% attack speed, 180% critical damage, and I think it was 360% melee damage, if I remember correctly. So just those 2 arcanes, if you want to play melee only, it would make you an insane melee focus frame, but then you would need to care about survivability as a resource. Then we have Arcane Tanker. On Argon equipped, plus 4000 armor, this is what it does already, but with less armor, and plus 400% Argon damage for 60 seconds. So obviously the big thing is that you use this if you want your Argons to be way more powerful. So let's say you want to grind Profit Taker for the most Arcane Swords. Arcane Tanker would be a really nice arcane to have for this because of the extra Argon damage. Then we have Arcane Tempo. On critical hits, rank 12 gives you 300% fire rate and 75% headshot damage to shotguns. So similar as Arcane Acceleration, makes sense to have consistency around these arcanes when you want them to do the same exact thing, essentially. Arcane Trickery. On finisher kill, 15% chance to become invisible and gain 350% melee critical damage for 44 seconds. So Arcane Trickery used to be a very good utility arcane back in the day when stealth was way more important. As stealth died down and became less important, this arcane lost value quite a bit, and I want to bring it back up to speed because finisher kills is not something you can get easily in this game, and overall, especially in coordinated squads, if you do get a finisher kill, you should be rewarded for it quite a lot. So 350% melee critical damage, and then you have a way more uptime so that you don't have to do it again. Then we have Arcane Truculence. When gaining 3000 or more Overguard threshold, release a 50-meter radial attack that applies max viral status stacks and deals 6% of the enemy's current health as viral damage. So the difference between maximum health and current health is this. So if you have an enemy that has, let's say, 100% of his health at the time that you're attacking him, they will get 6% of their health done to them directly. But if they are at 50% health, only 3% of their health will be dealt to them instead. So this basically becomes weaker as the enemies get lower and lower health, but on max health enemies it deals pretty decent damage. So a note that says viral increases damage by 350% at max health, so enemies would take 21% current health damage instead. Dante and Rhino having a field day. This arcane already respects line of sight. So line of sight checks, 50-meter radial attack, pretty cool. It's something that I also said about Arcane Eruption. Arcane Eruption 65-meter radius would probably need an LOS check as well to keep it balanced for this CC. Then we have Arcane Ultimatum. On finisher kill, you gain 4000 armor and 350% melee damage for 45 seconds. So this once again plays into the Arcane trickery thing. So if you want to play a finisher frame, then these two play with each other, and then you gain a lot of damage for 45 seconds and 44 seconds respectively to do whatever it is you want to do with your melee weapon after. So then we have Arcane Universal Fallout. This is the Oberon, the Nyx Arcane, the Wisp Arcane if you play with the 4th ability augment. 30% chance to drop a Universal Orb on enemy death, and abilities deal 150% more damage on enemies affected by radiation. So this, alongside with the Arcane Healing Arcane that completely ignores radiation damage and gives you damage on enemies affected by radiation, they can be used alongside each other, and then you can get some ridiculous damage on your abilities that deal radiation damage without actually touching radiation directly, and just by buffing the arcanes that buff radiation instead. So pretty cool to use these alongside each other, especially on Nyx and Oberon that have their tankiness already taken care of by their respective abilities to have invincibility. This is really nice. Then we have Arcane Velocity. On critical hit, gain 330% fire rate and 75% headshot damage to pistols this time. So, you know, this, once again, it plays into the... It's the same as Arcane Tempo and Arcane Acceleration, consistency. Arcane Victory. On headshot kill, 75% chance for 7.5% health regeneration per second, and 175% headshot damage for 9 seconds. So this is another niche arcane that, you know, it can be good for health tanking and the headshot damage can help a lot, but overall this is super niche, and you would probably mostly use it for the headshot damage instead of the health regeneration, and you would use it on another weapon that, or another arcane that gives you headshot damage in order to get some crazy Zada's Whisper procs and just go from there. Then you have Arcane Warmth. 100% chance to ignore a cold status effect and 100% damage reduction to cold damage, 100% damage to enemies affected by cold. So, you know, Pros having a field day with this arcane, he really loves this, and any other Warframe that, you know, Gauss, once again with his cold Thermal Thunder, they absolutely love this. Now, these are all of the arcanes that are on your Warframe directly. There is a bit more, but these are all the Eidolon arcane stuff, at least. Then we have Cascadia Accuracy. On roll, rank 12 gives you 650% critical chance and 250% critical damage on weak points hits. So these are a lot of huge buffs, and generally you will see that weapon arcanes are stupidly buffed in order to compensate for the fact that the difficulty is that high. Excuse me. So Cascadia Empowered. On status effect deals 1800 plus 1800 damage, matching the damage type of the status effect, and grants 150% damage vulnerability to that damage type for 4 seconds. So if you have a status effect, let's say you could use this with something like heat damage to gain more damage vulnerability with heat and gain more damage with heat overall, or you could use this to a weapon that simply goes for corrosive, let's say, and then your corrosive procs and corrosive damages would deal way more damage through this, and you would get way more damage to that. And also this can be a team arcane, because damage vulnerability to the damage type, if you have a sort of primer that has a lot of damage types and then you can put all status effect onto the enemy, then your other weapons having that damage type or your teammates having that damage type, they would also gain a lot of extra damage, which makes this really powerful. Then we have Cascadia Flare. On heat status effect, 26% damage and 4% fire rate, stacks up to 1040% damage and 160% fire rate. So because a lot of people are probably going to compare this to the normal primary Deadhead Merciless and, you know, secondary Deadhead Merciless and Dexterity Arcanes, those Arcanes now give you 780% damage if you want to compare it with that. So this is still pretty nice, and the 160% fire rate, it can work really well for some weapons, and I think if you had something like the Furious Incarnon, this would feel really nice, but it will also drain your Incarnon armor very quickly. So next up we have Cascadia Overcharge, giving the same buffs as the Cascadia Accuracy buff, but for overshields are active, so consistency there as well. Conjunction Voltage. On electricity status effect, you gain reload speed, multi-shot, and status chance, stacking up to 40 stacks. So now max rank will give 200% reload speed and status chance and 260% multi-shot. You can imagine the amount of combinations you can do with this now. This is honestly a very underpowered arcane in its current state, because reload speed doesn't do much for secondary weapons. It can be a good Arcane Arcane if you use it in combination, but as a secondary Arcane, not so much. You're missing a lot of value. But this puts all that value back, and you can get some crazy status chance with your secondary that deals massive electric rocks. So really good. Then we have Emergence Dissipate. These are, so Emergence Arcanes, these are all the Operator Arcanes. I'll go through them briefly. But, you know, while in Void Sling, press left click to dissipate the endpoint in a 10-meter radius. Enemies kit create a short-lived mode that replenishes energy and grants amp critical damage on pickup. So right now it's only replenishes energy. I added the second part, obviously. Emergence Renewed on energy depleted increase energy generation by 650% and amp fire rate by 250%. Now energy regeneration, by the way, if you don't know, this is for operators, so if you have run out of energy or amp energy, then you get it all back very quickly with this, and it has a 30-second cooldown. Then Emergence Savior on lethal damage, become invulnerable and gain 400% amp damage for 5 seconds and recover 100% health. This once again is for an operator, so if your operator dies, they don't die and then they gain the amp damage instead. So this arcane is really cool if you want to do Last Gasp, so you can consistently revive through that if you do ever go down. Then we have Eternal Eradicate, which on operator ability gives you damage currently. I added a small crit damage buff to make it more relevant because of all the other arcanes being buffed. Then we have Eternal Logistics, 100% ammo efficiency and 350% amp fire rate for 8 seconds. I think this is one of the strongest ones for sure on Void Sling, so you can activate this very easily. And 100% ammo efficiency and fire rate is no joke. This is absolutely insane, especially on the amps that can take huge advantage of this, like the Burst amp or the 777 amp. Then we have Eternal Onslaught on energy depleted, 320% amp critical chance and 90% operator damage reduction for 8 seconds. Eternal Onslaught is the current meta arcane for operators and their weapons, so I don't want to ruin that, and I think this 90% damage reduction can help a lot, so you don't need to actually equip something like Emergence Savior to save yourself from Last Gasp. Then we have Fractalized Resets on ability cast, gained 520% reload speed and primary damage for 5 seconds. This is a primary arcane, by the way, if you don't know. Currently it only gives reload speed at 240%, which is a lot, but having only the reload speed doesn't actually help that much, and having the primary damage as well alongside that, that can help a lot, and it can open a lot more possibilities. It's still not as much as the primary Merciless, but this gives way more reload speed as primary Merciless, so they can still be some type of way you can use this for sure. Then we have Longbow Sharpshot. On headshots, rank 12 gives 650% damage and 250% critical chance on your next shot. So a few things about this. This arcane, the damage here is multiplicative, it's not additive like Dexterity, Deadhead or Cascadia Flare, which makes it a lot more overpowered than them. But this is also a bow-only arcane, which means that you have a very big limitation to what weapons you can use this arcane with, and by far the strongest ones would be something like a Blast Focus, Daikyu Prime, Sinta, or Nataruk. So this definitely still makes those weapons very good, but you still have the issue that those are bows, and if you don't hit that headshot once, well, you're kinda fucked. So definitely still strong, but just keep that in mind. More operator arcanes. Magus Accelerant on Void Sling, rank 12 reduces enemy resistance to heat damage by 100% and reduces their armor by 90%. So this Magus arcane is definitely something that you can use alongside another operator arcane, or you can use this to simply empower your heat inherit capabilities and make your heat damage even stronger. Either way, it's really good. Then we have Magus Aggress, which is a very interesting arcane overall and a very weird arcane, but on Warframe melee transference. So if you exit your transference by pressing E instead of 5, then you get Heavy Blades deal 650% critical damage and 300% melee damage for 4 consecutive attacks. So currently I think it's only the melee damage, or is it the critical damage? Wait, let's see. Aggress, I think it's the critical damage currently by 300%. So this is boosted by a lot, and then we add the 300% melee damage as well, so this gets boosted even further to have a lot more damage on those heavy blade attacks and make sure they actually one-shot. Then we have Magus Anomaly. On transferencing, enemies within 48 meters are pulled towards Warframe and take 90% more damage from all sources. So yes, Anomaly does stay winning, but Anomaly, especially now that the enemies do not get stunned by it, they never get stunned by it, but you know, enemies deal way more damage, so you want to kill them as quickly as possible when they're pulled in, so making them take more damage, this helps a lot and it becomes a good utility arcane. Then we have Magus Cadence or Volt Sling gain 195% sprint speed and 90% operator damage reduction. You know, whatever. There might be some people that would be like, damn, we could do operator only and use this, and then yeah, that's true, but this is still a pretty niche arcane, utility arcane. Then we have Magus Cloud, 650% Void Sling radius for 6 seconds, and enemies hit with Void Sling take 40% of their max health as void damage over 3 seconds. So your Void Sling radius being larger, this already is a good arcane for something like Vazarin, but now you can use this in order to make it aggressive as well instead of just defensive. So you can go into Vazarin, dash through yourself, and then dash to a bunch of enemies to slowly deplete their health. Obviously, you will need to pair this with some kind of armor strip to be useful, because void damage does not bypass armor in any way at all. It's just a type of damage. So definitely good with an armor strip. Pretty okay under normal conditions, but because it does the damage over 3 seconds and not all at once, this means that you have a bit of time to do this first and armor strip later, and the damage would still go through and one-shot them, which is pretty good. So then we have Magus Destruct. On Void Sling, reduce enemy resistance to puncture damage by 100% and increase their critical damage taken by 250%. You know, pretty good. Overall, this is another one of those arcanes that you can use alongside your Warframe to make it really, really fucking strong. Like, genuinely extremely strong. Then we have Magus Drive. On transference in, increase K-Drive speed by 300% and gain 650% pistol damage while on a K-Drive for 30 seconds. Sadly, this doesn't work with Merulina. Please make it work with Merulina if possible, because I think this would be a really nice early arcane for people that like playing with Merulina Guardian and that playstyle, so I would hope this would change at least, because right now, as it is already, even with this huge buff, it would still be super niche. It's a K-Drive arcane. How more niche can you get than that? Then we have Magus Elevate. On transferencing, 95% chance to restore 650 health and grant 250% melee damage to Warframe. Magus Elevate is a pretty decent arcane as it is right now, because normally the 300 health is enough for you to heal and continue playing, but after the buffs to your health and enemy health through other arcanes, I don't think this will be enough, and adding the melee damage to give you more power through it, that can help quite a bit. Then we have, actually this should be for 5 seconds. Yeah, I forgot to add that. My fault. Anyways. So, Magus Firewall. On Void mode, generate void particles every 1 second up to 6 particles, each granting 12.5% damage reduction, so 75% damage reduction in total, and 30% critical damage for 130 seconds. 30% critical damage, you know, times 6, pretty good overall. And this should actually be more. Wait, I didn't think about this. Hold up. So 1 second, 6 particles, 30% critical damage, 30 times 6, that's 180. So it should be 10 to 60. Yes. Okay, this makes more sense. Whoops. It's fine. You see, the mistakes happen. This is a huge document, so fixing those mistakes live is something that I can do, and hopefully the more we find the better, so I can give this document as complete as possible. Then we have Magus Glitch. On transference static, 100% chance to engage transference static. This already does that. Gain 100% increased health and 300% up damage for 60 seconds. So increased health can be on either operator or your Warframe. I think being on your Warframe as well can be extremely broken, especially with some of the other arcanes. But at the same time, it's on transference static, so your operator would need to die, which doesn't happen very often. And killing your operator on purpose to gain this, I mean, would you do it? I don't know if you would genuinely do it. It could be a thing that you could do in order to benefit from the Arcane Grace buff that we saw before, but I think this is still fine for the most part. And if we want to make it for operator only, then we can do like 800 health or 800 increased operator health and then the up damage, and that's fine. Then we have Magus Husk. On transference out 650 armor and 150% fire rate to Arch Guns for 15 seconds. So another Arch Gun Arcane that you can use very easily. And then we have Magus Lockdown. On Void Sling, drop a mine that tethers up to 10 enemies into 22 meters for 4 seconds. Restore 30% operator energy per enemy tethered. Lockdown is a top tier arcane, and you know, it's top tier due to the stun that it has. The stun is already super broken, and increasing that meter by 1 per rank is still fine. But then restoring operator energy so that you can keep stunning enemies, it's pretty decent, so that you can abuse it on things like Last Gasp. And using this with the other arcane that we saw for either Magus Cloud, let's say, or where was it? Not Magus Accelerator. It was an emergence arcane, yeah. On Void Sling. Yeah, logistics. So if you use this with logistics as well, this can be really, really cool. So you can do way more damage with it and be safe on Last Gasp, or even just playing with Operator. So really nice. Magus Melt on Void Sling, increase heat damage and status chance in Operator mode by 30% for 15 seconds. Stacking up to 14 times. So, you know, this is really nice. Overall, you love to see some insane heat and status chance in Operator mode, and this arcane would make it so that operators building this and using the heat damage from their amp can get some crazy value. Essentially, if you have a 777 amp and you use this, then you can have your Furious Incarnon directly onto that. Like, you can have a Furious Incarnon directly onto your amp, which is pretty crazy. It's honestly really cool to have, and something like this would make a lot of sense. So then we have Magus Nourish. While an operator, restores 70 health per second and 40% amp magazine per second. This is not while on Void mode, while on Void Sling or anything. It's while on operator, so this constantly happens and basically gives you infinite ammo if you can really abuse it. It's pretty good. And then we have Magus Overload on Void Sling. Stun robotic enemies for 3 seconds, which then discharge electricity damage, dealing 95% of their max health to anyone within 25 meters. And then we added 6 magnetic status effects. So this is the anti-corpus arcane. It was always the anti-corpus arcane, but you know, it's kind of diabolical. Overall, Magus Overload is probably one of the arcanes that I saw it and I'm like, why haven't we been using this? Because I know it's really hard to get this arcane. I don't have this arcane myself because it's from rank 5 Vox Solaris for 10,000 standing each, so it's definitely difficult. But hear me out. It works for most Corpus enemies. It works for a lot of Origin enemies. It works for most sentient enemies. It works for every Murmur enemy that is a machine. And it also works on Void Rigs and Bone Widows. And this makes it so that I can think, even in current version Magus Overload, this can be completely free win if you do the Necromech Disruption. I will take a look into that because I want to check that. But that sounds extremely good. Like, this arcane is probably slept on completely. Then we have Magus Repair. On Void mode, heal Warframes within 30 meters by 46% health per second and increase their weapon critical chance by 250% for 15 seconds. So pure defensive arcane, pure utility arcane, really nice. Magus Replenish. On Void Sling, rank 12, heal 65% health and grant 250% secondary damage for 15 seconds. Pretty good. Once again, so now we have a weapon critical chance, a secondary damage, and a melee damage arcane, all healing and then doing that as well. Then we have Magus Revert. Use again within 3 seconds, or use Void Sling again within 3 seconds to return to operator to their original position at no energy cost. Restore 130 health and grant 350% amp damage for 10 seconds with a 3-second cooldown. So overall, this is only really usable in Last Gasp in combination with the Emergence arcane that we just saw that gives you ammo efficiency and fire rate. It can still be good in combination with that, but it's still a very niche use arcane. Then we have Magus Vigor. And on transference out, you gain 1300 health and 1200 armor. This is all for operators, so you know, don't get your hopes up too much. This is still an operator arcane that is useful only for operator. And then we have the melee arcanes. So this is where things start getting very interesting. As I said, the arcanes for weapon specific are extremely good. So let's just see how good exactly. Melee afflictions, instead of gaining 6, you gain 10 additional stacks of status effect and gain 50% combo chance for 10 seconds. So afflictions is an arcane that you can use in two ways. You can use it for either a slam build, or you can use it for a Tennokai build. And then you can use it for a Tennokai slam build, or you can use it on a weapon that their combos automatically knock people up. Regardless of all of this, 50% combo chance is something that is really good utility, and it helps you with using your melee weapon completely from the get-go, because you can stack to 12x a lot faster, so really nice to have. Melee animosity, gain 91% critical chance and 25% critical damage on your next heavy attack, up to 910% critical chance and 250% critical damage. So you say 910% critical chance and you think this is completely overkill? It is really good, but you have to understand that most of the mods on the melee category that give you critical chance, they get double critical chance for the heavy attacks. So if we're using for this sacrificial steel, this would give me 440% critical chance on every heavy attack. So you have to imagine that I would have to double the amount of critical chance that this gets normally, because obviously this is not doubled again. This is actually what you get on your heavy attack. So this makes sense. Then we have Melee Crescendo. On finisher hit, gain 13 initial combo for the rest of your mission. Maximum combo can be increased by another 3 times. Really big, ridiculously big. This combination like of Melee Crescendo and then whatever heavy weapon you want to use, heavy attack weapon, or you can use this Melee Crescendo with fucking secondary outburst. It gives you so many build path possibilities and so many new quirks and combos that it gives the possibilities are endless. And now, because of the maximum combo being increased, you can use things like the gladiator modes or blood rush reaping wounds more efficiently, and this means that you can also use this in pretty much any weapon you want, and you can benefit from it. It's not just a niche arcane anymore. Then we have Melee Dodi, gain 1.7 critical damage for every 10% status chance, which is a lot, by the way. This gives a ton of critical damage on your melee weapon. Puncture status effects have a 15% chance to inflict an additional random status effect. So yes, this is basically Encumber, but for melee weapons at a much slower rate, because 15% chance is basically nothing. If you're curious right now, secondary Encumber in the current game, it's around 24% chance. So 15% is like having a rank 3 Encumber on the current game, which is still pretty nice, but overall not that game breaking. But this definitely makes sense, and Melee Dodi being an arcane that locks you to use puncture damage essentially and not deviate from it, this helps a lot by adding condition overload stacks. This helps a lot by giving all your damage back, and you know, it makes the arcane way more valuable. Then we have Melee Duplicate, which is another niche arcane for only specific weapons that can now be way more normal. So rank 12, 100% chance for your attack to strike a second time with 450% critical damage and 250% status damage if your attack was a base critical hit. So in theory, or practically, you want your Melee Duplicate to be at close, your Melee Duplicate build, sorry, to be close to 100% critical chance. So this makes it so that when that occurs, then your attacks deal way more damage, because your next attack, you don't just double strike essentially as it is currently, you double strike and the second strike deals a lot more critical damage and status damage. So this can absolutely be broken for weapons that are focused around, let's say, slash damage, or for some builds or some, you know, some crazy shenanigans that you can do with 4 slash procs from the melee combos and all that. This is overall really cool. Melee Exposure, this is a really cool arcane for exalted weapons, and I want to keep it that way, but I want to give it a bit more viability if you want to use it in your actual missions. So on ability cast, gain 130% corrosive damage on melee strikes for 25 seconds, stacking up to 380%. Melee attacks deal 55% more damage on enemies affected by corrosive, similar to Roar and Bane. So you can imagine that this is absolutely humongous on a Warframe that will proc the status effect with their exalted weapons. So if you're using something like Korra, for example, Korra is having a field day with this. But also if you have a weapon that can deal with this and deal the extra status, then you know, this also helps for those Warframes. This makes it an incredible arcane for those weapons in order to take advantage of it. And it's another arcane that is not so niche anymore, but more of an arcane that is competitive. So I wanted to kind of make this for every single weapon arcane to make them competitive, and every arcane in general to make them competitive. There are some arcanes like the K-Drive arcane that I cannot do much about, but sorry, that is a person following my Twitch channel. That is the notification. Sorry if that jump scared you. Regardless, you know, that's the best thing I can probably do for this, for the melee exposure. And in general, I want all of the arcanes to be viable, so these are all really cool. Melee fortification on melee kill, you get 350%. Sorry, let's do that again. On melee fortification, on melee kill, you get 350 armor and 30% status chance for 10 seconds. So normally you would only get armor, and I think the base was 210 at rank 5. So this doesn't seem like a lot at first, because you're like, wow, you added all of these crazy stuff. Also, this is rank 12, not rank 7, my bad. And we now are stuck with this 350 armor and 30% status chance. That's a joke. But you have to know that melee fortification doesn't have a stack limit. It only has a timer limit, which means that killing 20 enemies within 10 seconds can result in 7,000 armor and 600% status chance. If you can get to 100 KPM with your melee weapon, these stats right here will be constantly on your melee weapon. This arcane is very strong like this. It might even be top tier like this. So this is definitely not something to be slept on. Then we have melee influence. On melee electricity status, well, first of all, before I say it, I know how you guys feel about melee influence. I don't want to completely nuke melee influence to the ground, but I want to make it so that you have a bit more build variety when building for melee influence. So now, 20% chance for elemental melee status effects to apply to enemies within 20 meters for 26 seconds. So as you can see, the range is not buffed anymore, only the duration is buffed, and you cannot refresh it while active. Melee electricity modes are 80% stronger. How does this work exactly? So if we go to a weapon like the Coda Motovor. Coda Motovor has a passive that every single physical damage mod is 6 times stronger when used with this weapon. So if we go to something like Buzzkill normally has 120%, sorry, slash damage. But if we use it on this weapon, it's 720%. So similar to Buzzkill on this weapon, using melee influence would result in the same thing, but the electricity modes are 80% stronger. So Voltaic Strike on this instance would give you 108% electricity damage with this arcane. So judging by that, you now have the possibility to use melee influence alongside more combinations. So if your weapon has innate viral, for example, and you want to do innate viral and then you want to do electricity, or you want to do electricity and then you want to do blast and then you want to do gas, you want to do whatever, you can now do that without really minding the amount of elemental weighting that your weapon may have. And this helps melee influence builds shine a lot more, because overall with the amount of health that the enemies have, having this AoE is nice, but your weapon will also need to deal enough damage to make it viable. Even through this buff right here, the highest thing that I can see the melee influence doing with this is making melee influence an insane primer arcane. Because honestly, the damage, I'm not sure if it would be enough. It would only be enough if you took pretty much 100% advantage of the arcane and used the perfect build for melee influence. So it's still good. I don't think it's broken. I think other arcanes might be even better than it right now. But, you know, we have competitiveness on the melee category instead of being one arcane for everything. Then we have melee retaliation. Gain 65% melee damage and 40% critical damage, or critical chance, sorry, for every 200 shields. up to 560%. Bonus is halved for overshields. So this, once again, you know, if you want to do Hildryn, you want to do Mag, you want to do Harrow, this is a de facto arcane and this helps a lot, and the extra critical chance can prove really handy if you want to go that way. So really cool. Finally, Melee Vortex, we have on rank 12 80% chance to pull it enemies within 18-meter radius and increase their damage taken by 90%. So once again, this is a really cool arcane for team play with Melee Vortex, and then you can be someone who, you know, they kill an enemy with a magnetic status, so you know, you proc magnetic status through your melee, then your ally kills someone or you kill someone, then everybody gets pulled to that enemy that died and their damage is taken, but the damage taken is increased by 90% again. So a very nice utility arcane for sure. Now, the Molt arcanes. Molt Augmented First. This is one of the most popular arcanes for Warframes. Having it so strong is fine, and I don't think its strength is going to go that far down because it will give you 130% ability strength and 130 maximum energy at max stacks on rank 12, which is still really nice and really cool to have. Then Molt Efficiency gives you ability duration and weapon critical chance per second up to a maximum of 78 and 180 respectively, while your shields are active. And this, once again, is a really cool arcane to have on a Warframe that doesn't take that much damage or its shields are ridiculously high. So good examples would be invisible frames, invincible frames, or frames that they have tons of crowd control like Limbo or Vauban. Then we have Mold Reconstruct. This is usually an arcane used by mostly Garuda, but I want to give it more value for everybody. So heal yourself and allies within affinity range for 13 health per energy cost of your casting ability, and healed allies gain 150% weapon status chance. So, you know, overall weapon status chance, you see it and sometimes you think, that's not very good, but status chance is extremely good. And especially when we're talking about a weapon like a beam weapon that can do a lot of hit procs per second, giving status chance to that thing is gonna be absolutely devastating. So definitely good. Then Mold Vigor on operator ability, 87% ability strength and 60% ability range on the next two ability casts. So Mold Vigor got two buffs. First of all, you gain the ability range, and second of all, you get two ability casts instead of one every time you use an operator ability. So this is pretty nice to have. And once again, now we have the primary arcane. So let's start with Blight. On rank 12, you get on toxin status effect 7.8% critical damage, 3.9% multi-shot, and 5% status duration for 12 seconds, stacking up to 40 times. The final stats are over here. As you can see, they're pretty high. Excuse me again. The status duration, well, first of all, a very underutilized stat. The status duration is absolutely insane. But more importantly, status duration can synergize extremely well with some specific subsume abilities such as Expedite Suffering, but most importantly, you can use this on someone like Dante and his fourth ability to get crazy nukes going into the enemies. So this is definitely a very nice arcane, and it will still be top tier on Siren because the critical damage and multi-shot are still ridiculously high, but the status duration being there, this actually does help a lot. Now, Primary Crux, on weak point hit, gain 65% status chance, 13% ammo efficiency, and 0.35 punch through stacking up to 10 times. So this, at max ranks, will give you 650% status chance, maximum ammo efficiency, and 3.5 meters of punch through. This is an incredible arcane for any weapon that you have, like a really solid fast firing weapon with a ton of status chance, or a beam weapon that you want more punch through on it, something like that. This arcane absolutely breaks it. This feels really nice to use, and I think it would make a lot of weapons way more powerful. Then we have Primary Deadhead. On headshot kill, gain damage and projectile flight speed for 24 seconds. So this is one of the first arcanes out of the Deadhead Dexterity and Merciless arcanes, and we see that we get 780% weapon damage as mentioned before. The extra buffs for this are the projectile flight speed, because sometimes on weapons with projectiles it's kind of hard to hit your headshots, and then we have 55% of headshot multiplier instead of the base 30%, and the weapon recoil stays the same. So pretty balanced overall. compared to the rest of the Arcane, still extremely powerful and still something that I can see people using a lot. The primary dexterity has a lot more flavor now. Instead of just being a utility arcane for your melee, now it gives you 130% damage and 40% status damage for 20 seconds. So the status damage works for your primary only, which means that if you want to use something like Slash, something like a DOT build that doesn't deal headshots and you can't use your primary weapon all the time, you want to use your melee alongside your primary, this helps a lot to make your primary weapon just be a heavy hitter for one of those heavy units that you need to kill with a slash proc, with a heat proc, or whatever it is you want to do. So, you know, the status damage only works for primary, good in combination with the slash dot build, so this opens up a lot of combinations now. Then primary Exhilarate, this is possibly the best utility arcane in the game now. It gives you 2.6 energy regen per second and 60% ability strength for 10 seconds, stacking up to 3 times. So yes, 180% ability strength to your weapon, and then potentially another 7.8 energy regen per second. Pretty busted, honestly. It's, if you want a utility primary weapon, that is pretty busted, for sure. Then we have primary Frostbite. On cold status effect, 7% critical damage, 5.75% multi-shot, and 2% damage per status effect afflicting the enemy. Stacks up to 40 times. So this in total gives us 280% critical damage, 230% multi-shot, and 80% damage per status afflicting the enemy. So damage per status afflicting the enemy, if you don't know what that is for some reason, it's the mode called Condition Overload. So Condition Overload, you know, for primaries and secondary weapons, this is the Galvanized Aptitude or in Galvanized Shot modes respectively. And as you can see, Galvanized Aptitude gives us 80%, so if you use this alongside the Galvanized Aptitude, you would get 160%, but it also gives you the chance now to completely remove Galvanized Aptitude from your build and get something else in there, like some utility or some more damage. So this is a really, really cool thing to have in an arcane, and I really hope this would become a thing at some point. Then we have Primary Merciless, which gives you the damage, again, 780%, and then you get the reload speed that you already had, and then you get an extra 250% ammo maximum. So ammo maximum was a thing that got nerfed in the past for this arcane, and I'm kind of bringing it back, not because it would be broken, but because for this context, and especially for the missions that you would play, if you wanted to use AoE weapons, you would want to use this arcane for the most part, and if you wanted to do that, you would want to not run out of ammo, because on these missions your AoE weapons would definitely need more ammo to kill targets, so running out of ammo would definitely suck. So give some ammo maximum to AoE weapons to help them out. Then we have Primary Obstruct. On weapon magnetic status effect, enemy weapons jam within 15 meters of the target with a cooldown of 6 seconds, plus 450% critical damage on enemies affected by magnetic status. God damn it. So, you remember when I was talking about Arcane Nullifier and how this could be working in a combination with some other arcane? Yeah, this is the other arcane I was talking about. If you have Arcane Nullifier and this, enemies affected by magnetic status now take 100% more damage, and they also take 450% more critical damage by your primary weapon. This could be an insane combination if you're using magnetic on your primary weapon, even through something as simple as the magnetic mode from here called Magnetic Capacity. Just this, if you can proc magnetic from your gun by using this, then that would make the arcane combination extremely good, and you have another combo that you can use and a lot of choices. Now, Primary Plated Round. On reload, deal increased damage per round loaded based on maximum magazine size, lasting for 38 seconds. This already does that for now, and it can reach ridiculous amounts if you have enough of a magazine. So of course I'm giving you magazine capacity to help out with this one, so you don't have to mod for it. So if you want to use this arcane, you now can. The buff lasts long enough, and it can potentially go way higher than Primary Merciless, Dexterity, or Deadhead. So very cool as a damage buff to have. Then we have the secondaries. Deadhead does the same as Primary Deadhead. Dexterity does the same as the primary, and now we have a new one, Encumber. So 52% chance to trigger a second random status effect, plus 90% damage per status afflicting the enemy. So once again, condition overload on the Encumber to make Encumber feel more rewarding and not just a utility arcane you will use for priming. So this also happens to not just be a primary arcane, you can use this to actually do damage with your weapon. And I know you're gonna say that, oh, but secondaries have 120% on their galvanized shots instead of 80. And I know that, but having two incredibly good passives, one of them would have to be weaker than an actual mod instead of the same. So yeah. Then Enervate, we got increased critical chance by 10%, resets after 13 big critical hits instead of 6 on rank 5, and big critical hits gain 150% critical damage. So you don't get critical damage immediately, but if you're doing an orange crit or a red crit, then that will get the big critical damage. So pretty good. Then we have a secondary Fortifier. For every 100 damage dealt to enemies overguard, gain 1 overguard, deals 14 times instead of, I think, 7 right now? Not sure. Yeah, 7. Deals 14 times extra damage to overguard and increases weapon damage by 35% for every 1000 overguard. So, first of all, you have to think of it this way. This arcane is really good on its own, but it becomes broken on specific warframes that can generate overguard on their own, such as Rhino. Now, obviously, you wouldn't leave this without a cap, and I'm not sure what cap I'm gonna give it. So for now, at least, I'm gonna say with a cap of 900% damage, so that it's fair. And then for rank 6, it would be 400% or 300%. So, you know, very strong. No question, it is still very strong. Obviously, you will need a cap for this, for the warframes that can get ridiculous overguard on their own and they don't need this and they're only using it for the damage. But this is still really, really cool. And obviously, you know, you could use this in combination with Arcane Truculence, for example, to gain the extra viral stack as well. And that would make you an incredible gun buffing warframe that generates overguard through Fortifier or through your abilities. So definitely not sleeping on this one. Then secondary kinship, while buffing ally warframes, gain 90% critical chance and critical damage per buff. Very niche arcane, can be used on a lot of things. If you think about it real quick, the buffing ally warframes thing, it can be a lot of things in this game. Like, you can even buff your ally warframes by using Mesmer Shield. Mesmer Shield is an ally buff. All 3 of the Wisp buffs are ally buffs. All 3 of the, like, using a Jade buff is an allied buff. You know, you have a lot of type of buffs that you can give your allies, so this is definitely fine. Then secondary Merciless, 65% damage. Well, yeah, same as primary Merciless. Let's not go through it. Secondary Outburst. On swapping to secondary weapon, consume all combo multipliers to increase secondary weapon critical chance and critical damage by 34% and reload speed by 25% per combo consumed. So, because of the way the melee crescendo arcane is, I really did not want to buff this too much. So, obviously we could have more, but I think 34% if you have a Venka Prime and the melee crescendo arcane, that would give you 34 times 16, 544% critical chance and critical damage, and then 400% reload speed. It is really diabolical. It is so strong. So I think this is still fine. Under the right circumstances, that arcane is broken, and I'm fine with that. So, secondary Shiver, enemies take 97.5% damage per cold status. This, once again, is CO, so this is a bit better than the condition, or sorry, than the secondary Encumber arcane. And then cold modes are 150% stronger on your secondary weapon. Well, I know it says on secondary, I think it should just be like that, because, you know, R-guns exist. So if you could use this on an R-gun and bypass that restriction, then that would be kind of broken. So for the gun that you use, essentially. But, you know, this is still really, really cool. And as an example, I can say that if you're using a 90% mode, like a 90% cold mode, then you use this arcane in order to buff it, then you would get 225% increased cold damage from this arcane and the mod usage. So really nice. Secondary Surge on ability cast, next shot gains a damage multiplier and a crit damage multiplier for every 200 energy up to 15 times. You can imagine this becomes extremely broken in combination with things like Arcane Battery or Molt Augmented. And overall, this is the Plink's Arcane. This is a Plink's Arcane and a half, and it just becomes a one-shot weapon. So this is really niche for sure, and you have to work in combination with your Warframe Arcanes in order to make it as strong as you can. But if you can do that, then that can be really, really cool. You know, that can be really nice, and it's once again another competitive option to use on your secondary weapon alongside every other competitive option that we have so far. Then Shotgun Vendetta on a shotgun kill within 5 meters of the target, plus 360% multi-shot, 180% reload speed, and 350% status chance. How long was it? Wait, I don't have the timer again. I forgot the timer. It is for 15 seconds, so, you know, for 15 seconds. Fixing mistakes, very nice. Then Theorem Arcanes, Theorem Contagion, Theorem Demulcent, and Theorem Infection. So these are all very weird arcanes, and I will describe them to the best of my abilities without wasting too much time. But there is some residual arcanes for your kit guns that they allow these arcanes to manifest into different damage types: heat, cold, toxin, or electricity respectively. So standing in a zone created by a residual arcane creates a globe that orbits the player every 2 seconds. The globe will strike the nearest enemy within 15 meters, dealing damage. Globes will persist for 30 seconds, whatever. Orbs increase the vulnerability of enemies to the globe's damage by 550% and reduces their armor by 90%. So the globes have automatic AI that travels through the enemies, and if they hit them, then enemies become 550% more vulnerable to whatever damage type you have on your residual arcane, and their armor is reduced by 90%. So Theorem Demulcent, standing in a zone created by a residual arcane, increases weapon damage and critical chance by 26% per second, stacking up to 15 times. FX persists for 20 seconds upon leaving the zone. So this one is seemingly by far the weaker of the 3 arcanes, but there was a way that I changed the residual arcanes, and this directly synergizes with them, so I didn't want to go overboard to not break them. So it gives 390% elemental damage and critical chance. It's still very, very good, but you will see from the residual arcanes it can be broken in combination with those. So, Theorem Infection, the final one, standing in a zone created by a residual arcane, increases damage of companions and summoned allies within 90 meters. Effect persists for 20 seconds upon leaving the zone. So, 52% damage and armor per second, stacking up to 15 times for your pet. The damage is an elemental type of damage, so whatever elemental damage you have, that is 52 times 15, which results in 780% elemental damage for your pet. That is pretty decent, to say the least. And it doesn't only work for your pets, sometimes it works for summoned allies. So for example, this arcane does work on Caliban. It also works on Necros. It also works on Cora Venari. It works on a lot of stuff that is very, very weird. So it can definitely have a place now. Now that's all for the normal arcanes that go all the way to rank 5, but in the game we also have some arcanes that go up to rank 3. There are some operator arcanes that do that, but I don't know what to do with them genuinely yet. But we also have Zoe and Kitgan arcanes, which are specifically increasing the max rank to 12 from 3 as well. But we need first to increase their rank from 3 to 5. This will be possible the same way it happened with regular arcanes years ago. So years ago, in case you don't know, you could easily equip 2 of the same arcane, so you could go 2 arcane energizes on the same Warframe, but you had way less of the chance to proc them, and they weren't as good. But you could equip both of them, and they only could be upgraded to rank 3. So when we got the update, they could be upgraded to rank 5 instead. You couldn't equip duplicates, and the rank 5 was close to as strong as the rank 3 stacked up twice. So definitely a good change, and I want to do the same thing here, where you need 21 of the same arcane as usual to reach rank 5. So for these arcanes, I am going to show their new rank 5, rank 6, and rank 12 respectively. Remember, rank 6 to rank 12 arcanes gain an extra stat and passive, while the other ones do not. Starting off with Exodia Brave, on heavy attack we gain energy rate per second for 4 seconds, stacking up to 3 times. This is what it does, but obviously we have increased the energy rate for this, and then we have 14 energy rate per second and 800 armor for 4 seconds, stacking up to 3 times. So Exodia Contagion, because I couldn't find a way to balance it out and increase the rank after rank 3 to make it any balance, the rank gets reworked completely. So currently, how Exodia Contagion work is that when you have it max rank, you gain 400% after traveling to 30 meters. So what we did now, or what I did now, was that you get 375%, so you lose 75% damage at max rank. This is fine. Contagion is still top tier. Then at rank 6 you get the 400%, and then killing 5 enemies with the attack grants 50% strength for the next ability cast. And then on rank 12, you know, as you climb up 25% at a time, you get a 600% damaging attack, and then killing 5 enemies with the attacks grants 150% strength for the next ability cast. So overall, you know, it doesn't really change your damage much, almost at all. Rank 5 and new rank 5 and old rank 3 arcane, you know, Exodia Contagion, the difference is minuscule. It would be like 20,000 damage at most from what you're dealing, or if you're abusing everything, it's still gonna be only 2 million damage. Considering this deals damage cap with some Warframes already, you don't lose anything. It literally is negligible. But that rank 12 though, that rank 12 is pretty juicy. And then we have Exodia Epidemic. So after a bullet jump or a double jump, Slam emits a shockwave forward that suspends enemies in the air for a short period. It currently doesn't work on heavy slam, so it's kinda for that reason. But you know, increases the duration enemies are suspended into the air to 6 seconds. And for rank 12 it does the same, but for 13 seconds, and enemies knocked by this attack take 150% more damage. So this is a nice utility arcane again. If you want to play for your teammates, you can use this attack, make enemies airborne all the time, and then give them damage vulnerability. Please make it work on heavy slams. If you take a look at this, like, please, there is no way why this arcane wouldn't work on heavy slams. It doesn't make any sense, so please make it do that. Make those viable. Then we have Exodia Force. On status effect, 50% chance to deal 650% weapon damage to enemies within 6 meters, matching the damage type of the status effect and increasing the enemy's vulnerability to that status by 75%. So anytime you see like this weapon damage thing, this is just the base damage of the weapon. This isn't way too much damage. Like this would be 650% damage. It's just, it's really just like 100,000 at most. It doesn't do much. But this, the damage vulnerability to whatever status effect you dealt on this, that does a huge difference, and that helps both you and your team again. Then like 100,000, it doesn't do much. But this, what it does already, and grant allies within affinity range 400% weapon damage for 20 seconds. And then on the notes, I also put allies are the ones who get the damage, not you. So this is a pure utility arcane, and overall this would still make it absolutely goated for team play, because 400% weapon damage is pretty crazy. Next we have Exodia Might, which is another finisher arcane, and this can be combined with Trickery and Ultimatum, if you remember. So we have rank 12, 50% chance for 75% lifesteal, and attack speed for 8 seconds to you and all your allies within affinity range. 75% lifesteal and attack speed is no joke. It can be literally so overkill that every attack you do heals you back up to full health instantly. Now, yes, it's for sure niche because, you know, finisher kill. You have to proc a finisher. But it's still a pretty big buff. So I still think it's fine. Exodia Triumph, 130% additional combo count chance. Heavy slam attacks deal an extra 900% weapon damage and gain 10-meter radius. Weapon damage equals unmodded weapon damage. This 900% will be at most 500,000 damage. You know, once again, nothing too crazy. The range is the big factor here. Gain 10 meters extra radius on your slam attack. You know, this is really, really nice. And it allows any of your Zos to become essentially Magistar if you really want to, without absolutely breaking it. But it's pretty nice. It is pretty nice. Then we have Exodia Valor, plus 650% additional combo count chance on lifted enemies. Lifted enemies have a 50% chance on dropping a universal orb on death. So 650% additional combo count chance on lifted enemies. That is literally like 5 hits on those enemies and you're immediately at rank or at time 12 on your Zo. So yes, this is incredible. But Universal Orb, you know, Universal Orb is whatever. It's nice utility. Nobody complains when they get free Universal Orbs. So I think this would still be the main selling point of this arcane though. Pax Bolt. So Pax Bolt is a complete utility arcane, and if I realize something is that complete utility arcanes, when you add the difficulty that high, they won't really help you that much. So 75% ability efficiency and ability strength of the next ability cast used within 13 seconds instead of 4 that is currently in the game. And headshots deal 40% increased damage after using the empowered ability for 24 seconds. So this gives you a mini deadhead passive as well. And, you know, you can combine this with primary or secondary deadhead depending on what your kit gun is to gain even more damage. And overall, it's a nice utility plus damage arcane now. Then we have Pax Charge, which is the most used one by far because the battery thing is absolutely incredible. So battery recharge delay is reduced by 95%, gain 250% weapon damage for 10 seconds after battery has fully recharged. Still a pretty generic choice overall, but nobody says no to free weapon damage, so why not? Pax Seeker, the projectiles are increased from 3 all the way up to 9, so 9 projectiles burst from the target and seek the heads of nearby enemies. Enemies killed by the projectiles have 75% of dropping, 75% chance, of dropping a health orb. So just a reminder for all of these, the way to get rank 12 arcanes is absolutely wild. It takes so much time and so much grind. So these are not easy arcanes to acquire for the player. So they need to be strong enough to be worth grinding for on those difficulties. So definitely making them powerful enough to feel worthwhile while making the difficulty still feel difficult is the goal here. Then we have Pax Soar, a more interesting one. 90 plus 95% accuracy while airborne, minus 95% recoil while airborne, plus 14 seconds of aim glide and wall latch duration. Enemies you hit while aim gliding or wall latching take 90% increased damage from all sources. So close to the start, I said that aim gliding would be a viable option now if these changes went through. So this is another piece of the puzzle that makes aim gliding really, really good. Because obviously this is a passive. If you want to aim glide, you can still use this and then use whatever other gun you like on the other slot, and that would still make aim gliding incredible. So it's definitely really, really nice. Then we have Residual Boils. So the Residual Arcanes, finally. These are all very, very interesting, and you will see why Theorem Demulcent wasn't buffed to the point that it could before. This is why. These Arcanes are why. So first of all, Residual Boils. At rank 12, 45% chance to spawn volatile hives for 39 seconds instead of 15. That explode when enemies approach for 80 plus 150% of weapons modded heat damage. On death, enemies explode, dealing 500 blast damage to enemies within 12 meters with a guaranteed proc. Now obviously 500 blast damage sounds like nothing. The guaranteed proc is what makes this broken. Guaranteed proc would take the damage from your actual weapon, not from the blast damage right here. So yeah, these arcanes are all incredible right now, and if you combine these with Theorem Demulcent, you could get some kit guns that have insane AoE capabilities. So definitely worth going for them now. Now, Residual Malador, rank 12, 45% chance to spawn a Frigid Mist for 39 seconds, dealing 40 plus 150% of weapons modded cold damage per second in 9 meters. On death, enemies explode, dealing 500 cold damage to enemies within 12 meters that instantly freezes them. So this is the same thing as this, but with CC, and freezing the enemy also gives you more crit damage to them. So once again, this is really, really cool. Then Residual Sock, on kit can kill, rank, where is it? 45% chance to spawn an electrified spike for 39 seconds, dealing 1200 plus 150% of a weapon's modded electricity damage per second within 10 meters. On death, enemies explode, dealing 500 electricity damage to enemies within 12 meters that chain lightning to enemies within 5 meters of them, stunning them. So how this kind of works is the stun works similar to Vault 4, as you can see, but how this kind of works is that when enemies die, you get an arc sort of that goes from enemy to enemy within 12 meters. So everybody within 12 meters gets affected, and then those enemies within 12 meters chain lightning to every enemy within 5 meters. So let's say that there are 3 enemies like 3 meters apart, then it would chain lightning with all of them, and then could keep going until it couldn't find another enemy. The Residual Viremia, on kit gun kill, 45% chance to create a pool of toxin blood for 39 seconds, dealing 40 plus 150% of the weapon's modded toxin damage per second in 9 meters. On death, enemies explode, dealing 500 gas damage to enemies within 12 meters with a guaranteed proc. Once again, this guaranteed proc is based on your weapon, so this gas proc would deal pretty good damage. And those are the Residual Arcanes. Remember, these are all Arcanes for kit guns, so these are definitely something that you use for those directly. You can't use them otherwise, and this would make kit guns a bit more competitive in that environment. Finally, set mods. So these are some final touches, and this doesn't have to do with the difficulty, but I wanted to include this as well, as I think this is something that needs to be added in the game, since set mods feel kinda incomplete. You'll see what I mean. So set mods are a widely useful set of mods with niche mods that can give 2 passives in order to increase your loadout strength. The mods are really good in general, but aside from very few exceptions, using all the mods inside the set does not grant anything more appealing than using 2 or 3 mods for the entire set. So let's say if you want to use the Ogre mod set, you would use like 3 to 4 Ogre mods at most. You would not use all 6 of them. There is no way you would use all 6 of them ever. The proposed changes are aimed to make using all of the mods in the set way more appealing in order to gain a great benefit when played around the respective bonus. Here's the changes. Reminder that the bonuses shown will only be enabled when all the mods on the set are used. So Augur sets, when all of the mods are used, you get 240% energy spent on abilities converted to shields, as it is currently, and abilities that cost over 50 energy deal 100% more damage to enemies below 75% health. This helps a specific problem that you might find, especially in higher level missions, that some abilities that you might use deal like 50% of the enemy's health or a bit lower than that, so you need to press them 3 times because using them 2 times would put enemies at a 10% health threshold, so you would either need to shoot them or use your ability again, which feels wasteful. So this fixes that problem, and it makes your abilities more powerful. Then Gladiator set, 60% critical chance, this is already a thing, and 20% critical damage per combo multiplier, so, using all 6 Gladiator modes is now way more useful, for sure. Vigilante set, 30% chance to enhance critical hits from primary weapons, increasing the critical tier by 2 instead of 1 on live. And then Vigilante supplies and Vigilante Affairs are removed from the Sentinel weapon pool of mods for balancing reasons, to make this not complete auto win, because you can put all of the Vigilante mods or your Sentinel and just straight up win. I don't think that would be a good idea to do. Then the Hunter mod set, companions deal extra 150% damage against enemies affected by slash status, and their attacks generate 5% of the damage dealt as overguard up to 10,000 overguard. You know, having overguard on your companion for free and allowing them to not die is really, really nice. So definitely something worth using if you're going for a companion mod set. So really nice. And then Umbral set. So this one is a bit weird, and I know because I went over with it with someone and they said this could be a bit broken, but I digress. I think this is something that is probably needed. Maybe not to the extent of this stat, but at least something similar. So tower resistance and damage from abilities heal the Warframe for 5% of the damage dealt. So, you know, you have Excalibur Umbra, let's say. He's the greatest example of this because he's the one that gets with these modes. And then you try to use them with these modes and you realize you don't even want to use Umbral modes on him and you want to use Shield Recharge modes. That feels so unbelievably bad, in my opinion. And if you are going through the trouble of using all 3 Umbral modes on a Warframe, which costs a ridiculous amount of mod capacity, you should be rewarded for it by getting a big bonus. Then we have the Sacrificial set, which is 1.7 times damage to sentience, and melee critical hits grant 10% ability strength for the next ability stack, stacking up to 5 times. So, you know, once again, because Sacrificial still is already extremely strong, but Sacrificial pressure is it's not the same thing. It's a Sacrificial steel is amazing. It's 220 times 2, but Sacrificial pressure is like, it's a joke compared to it. It really is a joke. So giving some utility for it and giving a reason to use it is really nice, especially when it has to, you know, compare with the likes of Condition Overload of Prime Pressure Point. So really nice. The tech set, mark a 12 meter zone every 15 seconds and inflict 200 damage per second to enemies in the zone. This is already a thing. And then each enemy hit restores 20 shields to both you and your Kavat. Now, you may say you don't know if this is strong or not. It doesn't seem that strong. If you check the tech mod sets, sorry about that. If you check the tech mod sets, we have Tech Assault, Tech Enhance, then Tech Collateral, and finally Tech Gravity. It's only 4 mods, first of all, which is really cool that it's only 4 mods. But the more important part is that Tech Assault and Tech Enhance you use on your build anyways. So then you have to use Tech Collateral on your Warframe, which is more or less fine. It's critical damage while inside the marked zone, is not a bad thing. And then you got Tech Gravity, which pulls enemies into the marked zone when you use a slam attack. So this helps the passive from here to become even more powerful and become even more useful, and restoring your shields if you do something like shield gating can be extremely good, and your Kavat can also benefit by staying alive a lot longer than this. Remember, you need the entire set for this to work, so I think it would make sense, to make it more powerful. Then we have the synth sets. Holstering primary and secondary weapons reload 20% of the weapon magazine per second. This already happens. And then 50% weapon damage on swapping weapons for 5 seconds. So this is pretty minor, but considering the synth set is already really good. Like if we take a look at synth sets, we have, you know, most of the synth modes are incredible. Like most of them are incredible. We have Synth Deconstruct, OP, Synth Fiber, OP, Synth Charge, really OP on some specific secondary weapons, and then Synth Reflex is the only one that you don't really use. So essentially you only need 1 mod if you're running a specific setup and you have this directly, and that would give you 50% free weapon damage on swapping weapons, similar to how Vigor Swap does it. So really nice. Mecha set is already really powerful, so what I did to it is that I gave it a 3 seconds immunity whenever your Kubro kills something with the mecha set on them. So if you get the killing blow on a mecha set target, you get 3 seconds of immunity to your Kubro, and since it can happen every 15 seconds, that is a 30% immunity uptime. No, wait, a 20%, sorry, a 20% immunity uptime. 20% immunity uptime is still really nice. It's not a deal breaker for sure, because Mecha Set is already so OP. I didn't want to make it completely insane, and I think having this to help your Kubro survive more, because they're kind of squishy, it can help a lot. The Strain set is a very interesting set as well. It's already OP and very unique. It's the only set that, you know, when you look at it, you only really gain stacks of maggots. So when this is what the set does. Grows up to 2 assists over 6 seconds, whatever, right? So basically, the actual mods themselves are what make this set super good, and not the extra effect that it has. So the extra effect that I added, besides what it already has, is giving a health orb. So the Helmet Charger grows up to 8 assists over 24 seconds that erupt every 25 seconds to spawn a maggot and a health orb. So, you know, health orb galore from a Strain set. It's still pretty good. And considering that you use Strain sets on a health tank in Warframe, then getting health orbs would be really valuable, matter of fact. Then the Aero set is the final piece of the puzzle for aim gliding. Damage enemies while aim gliding and put up to 5 of them to sleep for 9 seconds on landing. Snipers gain pinpoint accuracy and 60% damage to headshots while aim gliding. Why snipers? Well, for some reason, in case you don't know, Aero mods have the... is it this one? Yes. Aero agility. It is the set mode has a specific sniper mode that wants you to aim glide with a sniper. It's a really cool concept, with the really bad thing that snipers, when they are in the air and you aim with them and you try to shoot, they become inaccurate. Almost all of them. There is some exceptions, obviously, like the Comorex and the... I think at least the Codasporothrix, but I could be wrong. But most snipers are inaccurate when you do that. So this fixes that issue and gives snipers their most desired stat, which is headshot damage. So Aero set could be way more valuable if you wanted to use it this way, and it would make sniper builds by aim gliding and all that very nice to have. Then we have the Modus set, 100% chance to become immune to knockdown effects while airborne. Airborne melee kills grants shotguns 100% multi-shot for 5 seconds. Why shotguns? Because the Modus set have a shotgun mode that grants critical chance and status chance for shotguns when double jumping, if I remember correctly. Or no, after landing to the ground after you're airborne. So, you know, it's a pretty good combination of melee kills in the air and then shotgun kills on the ground type of set. Then we have the Carnage set. Heavy attack kills grant 30% evasion, status effect immunity, and 50% slash status damage for 6 seconds. The Carnage set... excuse me. The Carnage set gives you a lot of slash damage on its own, and because it activates on heavy attacks usually have guaranteed slash procs, so this just plays into those guaranteed slash procs and helps them deal more damage, which can be really nice. Then we have the Jagulus set. Slam attacks manifest tendrils that lash enemies within 10 meters, dealing 75 puncture damage and stunning them for 3 seconds. Stunned enemies are 100% more vulnerable to puncture damage. So puncture damage in general is not widely found, but obviously using this set with melee doty and all of the buffs can make for some pretty funny puncture damage and some pretty funny damage numbers for sure using puncture. So it's definitely something that's needed in my opinion for this set, because I don't think this does much, if anything. So like, yeah, sure, you have a 10 meter CC for 3 seconds, whatever, you know, it's fine. But this is more like it, you know, this helps a lot more, for sure. And then Saxum set, this is one of the more famous ones. Lifted enemies explode on death, dealing 30% of their maximum health as impact damage in a 12 meter radius. This is already what it does. Enemies hit by this attack have their armor lowered by 50%, 6-second cooldown. So the 6-second cooldown was innate, you know, I didn't add this already was a thing on this set. I added the armor reduction. So the armor reduction, it's no-brainer, it just helps this attack get more powerful. So, you know, if you have something like corrosive primer and then you use this and then you do the lifted thing. Yeah, you get the point. Amar says, teleport to a target within 30 meters on using a heavy attack. Heavy attacks gain 3-meter range. Note, this is a dual dagger set, meaning that the heavy attack can only be used on them. Dual daggers have a pretty decent heavy attack that deals 2 attacks instead of 1, but gaining range on the heavy attack is really nice because dual daggers have 80% follow through and the range really benefits on them. So this is a pretty good buff if you want to play on that playstyle. Then the Boreal set reduces damage by 60% while airborne, this already does that, and then gain 50% weapon damage while aim gliding. Once again, some aim gliding tech here if you want to use it. It can be very, very cool. Note, Titania does not benefit from the extra weapon damage, but aerial melee attacks do, including Exodia Contagion. Pretty good. Naira set increases damage from slam attacks by 300%, this already does that, and grants 50% combo duration on slam attack kill. So 50% combo duration, you know, displays on the melee affliction buff of 50% combo count chance, so you know, it can help you with maintaining that combo duration very high, and it could make Naira set on someone like Colervo, let's say, really, really good. But you have to understand that the Naira set is only applicable to a unique weapon category that is whips. So if you want to use it with whips and you want to get the slam attack bonus, then sure, but combo duration is going to help you a lot more because whips are definitely better using their own combos than using their slam attacks. So this is definitely a really nice buff for the set mode. So finally, we're done. This document is a work in progress. There is a lot of things to take into account in terms of balancing and player satisfaction. Its goal is to present ideas to DE in order to hopefully get something like this into the game at some point to evolve the state of the game's endgame activities. So, took a while. Long yap session. I know I messed up at some points, having to correct myself or coughing a lot. Been a bit sick after, you know, just recovering after COVID and all that, so. But overall, this took me around 7 hours to initially write. And then I shared this with a few people, including my Discord server, to provide me ideas. And we have a huge change list over here in order to present it. And overall, I think it worked pretty great. So I think as a concept, this still is absolutely beautiful to have, and having more still path difficulties, scaling the still path difficulties to incredible amounts, and then adding rewards that help you reach the incredible damage needing to beat those difficulties, while simultaneously buffing every playstyle to make all Warframes more viable for every playstyle. This is really nice. Would there be Warframes that benefit from this more than others? Yes, definitely. Some notable ones would be Gauss, Zephyr, Oberon, and probably Siren. But, you know, this is not something that I can really do anything about, essentially. Because to do something about that, I would need to nerf the Warframe directly, and I don't really want to do that. And I want all Warframes to be viable with this, so there is definitely a lot of stuff in this document. So if you want to take a look at this document again for yourself, you want to share it, you want to pass it around, make it more known, or simply just see it and change things to whatever you would want to change, adjust it, feel free to get it. I will have it on the description of the video, and I will probably also make a Reddit post presenting this document again. So, you know, go crazy with it. As you can see, it's mostly balance changes, everything from... where is it? Yeah, everything from this point above is basically all the changes that people would probably be more interested in, on how the game would be balanced around new difficulties. But I know a lot of people would like to get into the nitty-gritty stuff of how the Arcanes would work on my vision, at least. And if they would like that, or if they wouldn't like that, to possibly get more opinions on if this would work or not. I know this was a long video. I know this could have been a tiresome video for some people, and especially if you don't like my voice, I'm sorry. It's the only voice that I was given. I can't do otherwise. But yeah, this is my document. As I said, Feel free to read it for yourself, and I'm fine if you didn't really watch this video, but you just wanted to see the document and all of the conclusions and stuff. But I think something like this to be in the game would fix a big issue in the game right now, and that is that the game doesn't really ask you to learn how to mod or learn how to play the game, and it simply throws you to the wolves kind of without any explanation, but then the wolves turn out to be just regular sheeps, essentially. This would kind of force the players to try and learn how to build and try and learn combinations through all of the arcanes that were mentioned in the mods, and that would make build variety and, you know, a lot of more Warframe choices to be way more viable. And that would kind of be my goal for this, alongside making the game more difficult. So, you know, still Path 7, new difficulty, rank 12 arcanes, reasons to do Apex bosses, reason to do the Eidolons, reasons to do Exploiter Orb and Profit Taker again, despite, aside from like credits, you know, all of this good stuff. But yeah, this is the video. This was me. Feel free to discuss below on what you want, what you would want to change, if you think this is a good idea, if you think this is a bad idea, and why. And yeah, thank you very much for watching. I will see you in the next video.